My brother was born in Manila. See? Well, when we were stationed at Clark Air Base, just outside of Manila.
Very well.
But that's funny.
My tongue does not, or mouth, or whatever it is.
I know, it's like, that's one of those ones that could be, it's kind of like rememberers.
Huh?
It's like rememberers. Too many, there's like,
yeah, you heard me.
No, that's what, I heard.
Hey, everyone. I will now call to order the regular scheduled town council meeting for May 9th, 2023. And thank all of you for joining us here in the council chamber and those watching on live stream. I would like to start out by saying it was such a joyous occasion this past Saturday with the Peak Fest event, the 42nd Peak Fest. And I know we had the rain was supposed to come. And so the mayor and council got involved and we met in my office and we just hit a button and put a bubble over the town and it blocked all the rain. So it was actually raining when you were here, you just couldn't tell. So we had the bubble over. But anyways, we had a great event and as well as today, we have a great day, nice sunny day, and I'm glad you're here. So what I want to do now is move into our invocation, and we recognize that we have many faiths that represent our town. And we understand not all people express and practice the same faith traditions, but we do know this: diversity and inclusion is a priority for us, and that binds us, that gives us strength, and we continue to move as one community. So with that, we often have a moment of silence to honor everyone in this regard. But tonight, what I want to do is honor a young man who I had the opportunity to recognize last year, celebrated his 100th birthday, Nolan Cook. Nolan Cook actually passed away this Saturday. And he was, as you can tell, he had many years of service to the town, 15 years as auxiliary police officer, 4 years with Wake County School Board, and then, of course, 16 years as a Board of Commissioner of the board. So we recognize him tonight, and we honor his family and Mr. Cook. And if you would, please join me in a moment of silence to honor him. Thank you. If you're able, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. We'll move now into our consent agenda, and all consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda or considered separately. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
All right, so moved. Mayor
Second.
Pro Tem. Second. Councilman Gant. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. We'll move now to our presentations. Tonight we are removing presentation number 1. We'll come back with that in the next council meeting. And we'll move to presentation number 2, Proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month for May 2023. And we're going to read this in unity as we always do. So who has the first?
That would be me.
Okay, Councilman Zigerman.
All right, this is the proclamation of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month 2023. Whereas during Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we acknowledge AAPI individuals and communities who have lived and worked in the United States for more than 200 years and have made an indelible impact on our nation, our town, and
whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month recognizes the significant contributions of individuals and groups of Asian and Pacific descent to the history and culture of the United States, and
Whereas Luzonians, also known as Filipinos, were the first Asian immigrants to the United States from Manila in the late 1700s. This month of May was selected as a way to honor the immigration of Asian American residents to the United States in 1843 and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, which was constructed predominantly by Chinese immigrants. And
Whereas President Jimmy Carter issued Presidential Proclamation 4650 in 1979, which designated the week of May 4th, 1979 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Week, and President Barack Obama issued Presidential Proclamation 8369 in 2009 proclaiming May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and
whereas Asian American and Pacific Islanders are some of the fastest growing ethnic populations in the nation, comprising 6.2% of the United States and 9.9% of the town of Apex.
Now therefore, I, Jacques K. Gilbert, Mayor of the town of Apex, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the town of Apex, and call upon all residents to reflect on the contributions and achievements of the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities and to show appreciation for their continued strengthening of our town. Signed on this 9th day of May 2023. And accepting the proclamation tonight is Dr. Ji-Hoon Kim and Mr. Shimozano, and of course our very own DEI coordinator, Celeste Scher. So if you would please come up.
Well, I love this town of Apex. I am actually an active duty Army officer. CCS over here in 2017, and currently live in Salem Village. Such a beautiful town, very inclusive, booming, as we all know, and there goes some of the inconvenience along with it. That's part of the growing pain. Since then, Army has actually moved me up to Northern Virginia, but because my family actually loves this town, he chose to do, geo-bachelor thing. So, I actually still work up there in Fort Belvoir with my family still down here. It's totally worth it still. All those 6 hours of commute one way, multiple times.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be here in town when I heard about this proclamation. I thank the Mayor Gilbert and the team here. Again, it's a great town to live in, and I'm sure all of you actually agree with me on that one. So thank you, and I look forward to actually more of the township and the collaboration and partnership. We all kind of get along with each other here. So thank you very much again. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Actually have something. So I'm a pharmacist, so I'm very prepared for some of these things. So again, thank you, Mayor Gilbert and Council, and of course the town of Apex for proclaiming May as the month of Asian American and Pacific Islander, or AAPI month. So I am a second generation Japanese American, so Nisei. But I'm also part of the Soka Gakkai Nichiren Buddhist community here in Apex. We just opened our Buddhist center here at the beginning of January. So, but of course I wanted to thank, my friends and family for supporting me, and of course my parents for teaching and keeping me connected to my Japanese heritage. And again, I wanted to thank my Buddhist community here, and of course of Apex, for allowing us to have, diverse religious faiths here and celebrating that. And finally, of course, I also wanted to thank my fellow AAPI community members here in Apex for continuing to share your stories from Dr. Kim shared and experiences in culture to really enrich and educate the community here in Apex. But thank you once again for this opportunity and allowing me and Dr. Kim to share words. And thank you everybody here for coming to celebrate AAPI. Thank you.
You can probably tell we are in the safest place in North Carolina. We have a proclamation for National Police Week and Peace Officer Memorial Day proclamation for May 14th through May 20th. It's good to see so many families. That's how I see that. My family. It's like a family reunion here. I want to honor you tonight with this proclamation, Chief Armstrong, and all the people that serve so well. So we'll start the proclamation off now. Who has it first?
I have the first, and I'm honored to do so. Proclamation for National Police Week 2023. Whereas Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th, 2023 as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which it falls as National Police Week, and
Whereas there are approximately 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the 99 dedicated officers of the Apex Police Department, and
Whereas the members of the Apex Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the residents in our town, and whereas it is important that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people of this town by safeguarding life and property and protecting against violence and disorder, and
Whereas it's equally important that residents know and understand the hazards our officers face and the sacrifices they make in order to keep each of us safe, and
Whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 35th Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2023.
Now, therefore, I, Jacques K. Gilbert, Mayor of the town of Apex, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 14th through May 20th, 2023 as National Police Week in the town of Apex and recognize all officers who have dedicated their lives in the service of their communities. I further proclaim May 15th, 2023, Peace Officers Memorial Day to honor our law enforcement heroes who have been killed or disabled in the performance of their duties. Signed this 9th day of May 2023. We would like to get everyone up here to take this amazing picture to honor this proclamation. So if you would, please join me. If you could, please stand. If you can, please stand for these heroes in our town. Thank you.
Touching this right here, if you're 5 to 6 foot, probably we got like 4 levels. We're gonna have to file away.
oh yes, yes.
It doesn't matter that we're like up in 2 feet up.
Nice activity, guys.
no, we're good. You're sitting on your knees, you're probably still taller than most of these guys.
Like that. Take one step back. Now let me go.
You guys can be seated if you would like. Thank you.
You're gonna take quite a bit. Like 5, so hold tight. Right here, 3, 2, 1. One more. Last one.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll move now into setting of the regular meeting agenda. And do we have any changes on the agenda? Don't see any. With that, you have the printed version in front of you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right,
Second.
all right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. We move now to a public forum. This is opportunity to allow community members to present to the mayor and council. We want to hear from you, and we want to respond, not verbally, but we're taking notes, and we want to make sure that you understand that we value your input. It's your time to speak to us. So you have 3 minutes to do that. Unless you're representing 4 or more people, you have 9 minutes. So we'll start with the list, and we have a total of 4 people presenting tonight. So we'll start with Ms. Ashley Solis. If you would please come up. Okay.
Hi. If you're from Sweetwater or Smith Farm, okay, yes, stand.
Okay.
So, hi again. We're here requesting that some changes be made to Richardson Road to increase pedestrian safety. That is painted crosswalks at Richardson Road and Hassey and Coral Banks and Richardson. On those 2 same intersections, we would like flashing crosswalks. The technical name is rectangular rapid flashing beacons at both of those intersections. Reduction of speed from 45 to 35 miles an hour. And we are urging and hoping you will consider bringing in specifically a pedestrian safety expert. I understand the planning that goes into these subdivisions takes years, and we have city engineers, but we're not taking into account foot traffic. And so much of what we're developing is mixed use space, which is amazing because that's what you want and what's environmentally friendly. But if we're not, we can't do better if we don't know better. So if we could get somebody or something, consultant group, consultation, just that, we're asking that more heavily be considered. Okay, so according to Vision Zero, which we are all working towards as a city, 259 crashes involved pedestrians in 2022. In a different study by the AAA, your risk of fatality is roughly 50% if you're going 42 miles an hour. The speed limit is 45 with no crosswalk. We are playing real life Frogger on Richardson. And not crossing the street is not an option if you're trying to get to amenities, if you're looking at anything in the community, and I don't even want to think about what's going to happen once the commercial area is developed. Harris Teeter, an average grocery store has 400 cars a day. That's cars, not people. So we're already having a little over 4,000 cars a day on Richardson right now, and that's before the commercial side's done. So I'm thinking possibly double. So you're gonna have that many cars go by a day without lighted crosswalks. It's not a good situation. It's dangerous at best. I would also say that I work with kids every week, specifically disabled children, and I would not be able to, like in good conscience, have them cross the street with me. My son is 17 and he has special needs. He cannot cross Richardson by himself because that's how dangerous it is, especially if you're dealing with anyone with any kind of delay or handicap that might take them a little longer to cross. So I'd like you to think of all those things, and I look at this more as an opportunity, not necessarily just a problem to solve, because this will come up in other subdivisions that are coming. And if we learn from Sweetwater what to do, we won't have to go back and do anything that's going to cost us extra money in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Solis. Dave Johnson.
Hi, my name is Dare Johnston. I live at 1192 Brown Velvet Lane. And I want to first off reiterate what was said earlier tonight. I have lived in Apex for a while now. I absolutely love the community. I'm so happy that I made the change and moved here. But I live in Sweetwater, as do many of the other people here tonight. And I travel Richardson Road consistently as a pedestrian. I walk my dog, I walk back and forth. And over the time that I've been living there, I've become more and more concerned about what I'm seeing. If you've never been to Sweetwater or Smith Farm and you've never walked up and down Richardson Road, I would ask that you come out in the mornings, come out on the weekends, come out in the evenings. There are tons of pedestrians walking back and forth on that road. We're walking dogs, we have children. Children are learning to ride their bikes. It's a wonderful community, but it's also a community that has a major highway or a major throughway running right through the middle of Sweetwater and Smith Farm. If I live in the townhouse area of Sweetwater, I have to cross the street to go to the pool. I have to cross the street to go to the fitness center. If I'm living in Smith Farm on one side of the street, I also have to cross the street to get to the amenities in Smith Farm. It's not just adults that are doing this. There are children that are doing this. And while we'd all like to believe that parents take their children and walk them across the street, we also all know that doesn't happen. I've also watched where Smith Farm has built their play fields, I've seen kids run after balls into the street, into Richardson Road. A car coming 45 miles an hour down Richardson Road is not necessarily going to see that child, and they're going to run out into the middle of the street. I would ask for three things. To reiterate what I let Ashley do the statistics. This is an emotional plea from somebody who lives there and is a mom, honestly. Please lower the speed limit on Richardson from 45 to 35. We need crosswalks that, first of all, tell people it's a crosswalk, and there's a state law that says that a crosswalk must be observed and somebody has to stop for that crosswalk. The other thing that I would ask is that you look at lighting on Richardson Road. Richardson Road at night is extremely dark. We've got major traffic going back and forth on Richardson Road. We need more light. We've heard stories of people who don't see pedestrians who walk dogs and who are on Richardson Road at night, and it's very concerning. There just needs to be more light there. Overall, I would just ask that you listen to us. We've come multiple times. Just please, if nothing else, study the issue, because what I'd like to avoid is it's not if a tragedy is going to happen, it's when a tragedy is going to happen on that road. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Pacheco.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Veronica Pacheco at Sweetwater, 1316 Brown Velvet Lane, Apex, North Carolina. I want to thank you all for all your efforts to reduce the speed limit. In honor of Austin, as you all know, my dog that got killed on the intersection of Richardson and Hossey. I feel like Austin has kept all the dogs safe in the dog park so far, because there has been a lot of incidents where dogs have crossed through there and escaped, and thankfully they've survived. Twice, one of them got hit by a car and he survived. So I feel like Austin's an angel in heaven watching all over our dogs. I do feel like that was a big tragedy for me, and I just can't imagine another tragedy happening on that intersection. So I would love for you all to go the extra mile and make this happen for us, to have crosswalks that are lighted on that intersection with the flashing lights on Richardson and Hossey. We sat there at the dog park and we've noticed that within an hour, about 15 people cross, either riding bikes, especially going to the Tobacco Trail, or just going back and forth now that the pool is open, just on that intersection. They cross, I would say, about 15 people. So you estimate probably about 150 people throughout the day that cross on that intersection. And it's just a matter of time before something happens. If we could also ask for a few crosswalks with flashing signs and yield signs closer to Smith Farms as well, since there's a lot of people that cross through there. but I want to thank you for your efforts in reducing the speed limit and for your patience and for listening to us and our concern as a community to help us keep our community safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Stitt.
Elizabeth Ray Stitt, 3113 Friendship Road, Mayor, Town Council, good evening. So this marks my 1-year anniversary of coming to express my concerns regarding the Big Branch Force Main. It's not a joyous occasion for me because very little progress has actually been made. Many of the questions that we asked a year ago still remain unanswered. And when I came at the April 11th meeting, I shared with you, along with 2 of my neighbors, our concerns about how the safety of our animals, our property, our families, our neighbors, the workers were at risk based on the lack of communication. I shared in that meeting that I had sent an email on April 6th, and the meeting was April 11th, that, hey, can I please get a list of subcontractors who are coming on my property? What's the scope? I need to understand who's legitimate. To date, there has been 0 response from the 4 employees who were on that email. What's worse is I continue to get phone calls. I got 2 phone calls on May 2nd. The man argued with me that he had to come on my property to check my septic tank. I don't have a septic tank on the property that you're going to take. I had to send him public records showing it's in a flood zone. And by definition, you do not put a septic tank in a flood zone because it will contaminate the groundwater. So once we got beyond that, 15 minutes later, he calls me back and says, oh, I need to come check the streams. And I said, well, before you do, I need to understand how you're going to access my property. Give me some details. He couldn't answer the question. So I sent him an email giving him the opportunity to follow up with me. So today, a week later, I do my follow-up. He's like, oh, sorry, we don't need to come on there. I don't understand who, what, when, and where. Okay, so that's a problem. But what's worse is beyond the silence, that's bad. What's worse is what the town did. The town posted online the weekly activities of 5 companies in enough detail about my properties, my neighbors' properties, to impersonate the town and to impersonate these 5 companies. So when I say I need to know who's legitimate coming on my property, this is not a joke. A year of my time coming to say, I need your help, I need your partnership, I need your support, communication, collaboration. At what point are you going to say, we have got to all sit down at the table and figure out how to communicate? I don't know the answer, and I'm getting frustrated, and I'm a really patient person, and I will always be polite. My offer to each of you to come out to the property to see and understand the circumstances remains. It's been out there for an entire year. So we have many more years ahead of us. You guys know that. This $26 million project has turned into a $40 million project. And with it being one of the larger town projects, if it was mine and I owned it, I certainly would put my boots on and go out there and understand what the problem is. Because this is our future. I am not going anywhere. I have lived here for 32 years. 32 years. And public record will show I own 38 acres. I am not going anywhere. I am not giving up my lifestyle, and I have a right to know who is coming on my property, period. And I'm not going to take legal action against you guys, because you're going to take legal action against me to take my property, and all of this will come out in court at that point. Please start getting involved. Act like my neighbor. Act like you know me. It is a running joke with some of the developers because we all agree they don't acknowledge me around here. They don't acknowledge me in public because they don't want to be associated with me because I have a reputation for showing up over and over and over. I have rights as a human being. I need you to stop and communicate. Show up, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stead. And thank you to all people who came out tonight to speak in public forum. We will be in touch with you. All right, we'll move now to public hearings. And we will.
There was one more. My name was on that list as well. Gabe Carrillo. I actually was the first one here today. Kelly West Homeowners Association.
I don't see it, but come on up.
Okay.
And we'll get you signed up.
No, it's on there. I promise you. One of the lists. Anyway, I hope.
Are you here to speak to a public?
Yeah, I am.
Hold on. Are you a public forum or public hearing?
Public forum. It's actually just to come before you guys pleading the case for the Beaver Creek Greenway.
Okay, that's a different. We'll call you up at that time.
Oh, that's different?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. We'll see you again.
Hold on. I don't know if that greenway he's talking about is exactly talked about.
It's public hearing.
Well, okay. But
It's not on the docket though, is it?
I think it's a little different than what he's talking about the greenway getting built versus like the planning for the other master plan.
Well, you're welcome to speak.
I think it's more appropriate here.
You have 127 folks that are there, and I represent them as the president of Kelly West HOA. So this is actually not the first time I've come before you guys before. I've met individually about this issue before. And I got to tell you, I am quite frustrated with where things stand, just because it has been a can kicked down the road too far. And we're at the point now as a community where we said we've got to take some action here. So I'm not actually here asking for anything. I'm actually letting you know, which I think is the right thing to do, that we are going to proceed with doing something in terms of administrative steps for oversight. We don't know what to do at this stage, but it has been 10 years ago that we started this, and we allotted the land for it. And we said, you guys can take it and do what you will, but give us 1 mile. That's all we've asked for in that greenway, 1 mile. And that can has been kicked numerous times. And at this stage, what we've done is we've reached out. We have cycled back on numerous opportunities to try to open up. I've contacted the utility company myself. I actually spoke to the head engineer that signed off on the easement just so we could get it back and sent. And now we're at this stage. And I think it's atrocious because we've been here long before 540 ever even showed up. And there's something to be said for the people who've been around here for a little while. Prior to, no offense to Sweetwater, but way before. And you got to honor those people who have that built, established part and fabric in this community. And so there's 3 things about it. One is the procedural process we think has been problematic. We haven't been really included in what has gone forward in terms of like what is actually the bidding process. We were told that it's approved. It went for CAMPA funds. We said that NCDOT was the problem and that they had stopped. COVID has been blamed. It has been the recycled, replay excuses. And we're saying enough on that part. Because that's nothing new. We all have to deal with that in medicine and law. I have to deal with that myself. And I can tell you right now, the bucket's turning and supply chain ain't getting any better. So we asked previously for the town council to think about actually finding funds for an alternative or removing funds from an alternative situation that you have set up and putting them aside for what potentially we say you've already agreed to and should invest in now. And so that's what we've said. We feel very strongly about it. And we think Apex has got the money because we've been building like it's cool. And we know because our community, which has been here for X amount of years, has just been inundated. And so has our schools, which some of you I know are very passionate about new schools coming in. And I've shared that same frustration. But the lack of partnership, the lack of process, and the lack of respect for the individuals that have been here is far, far exceeding where it should. And it's a problem that has to be addressed. In our community, 127 individuals, and our next door neighbors in Greenbrier, 213 homes, are going to sign on with us. And we'll do what it takes, and we'll take those steps. Because we think we are tired of being built on, and we're telling you all to build for us, not on top of us. And we asked, stop the delay of the Greenway and do it. It's long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrillo. All right, that officially closes out the public forum, excuse me. We'll now move to public hearings, and we have public hearing number 1, 2, and 3 presented tonight by Ms. Angela Reinke and Shweta Nanikar.
Good evening, Mayor Gilbert and Town Council members. I'm thrilled to be here tonight as we present the Master Plan for Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, Greenways, and Open Space. The Master Plan is the product of nearly 2 years of research, public input and engagement, and analysis of our current offerings. The Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resource Department is excited for our future and opportunities for town residents utilizing the tools and strategies that will be put in place to evaluate, prioritize, and implement the recommendations of this plan. Now I'd like to introduce Shweta Nanaker, the project manager with McAdams, to present an overview of the master plan.
Good evening, Mayor Gilbert and the council. It's my immense pleasure to be here today to share the master plan for parks, recreation, cultural resources, greenways, and open space. At the end of the presentation, we would like to request a recommendation of support for the adoption of the master plan for the 2023-33 planning horizon. Town of Apex initiated the planning process to get a deeper understanding into the current state of recreation system in 2021-22. This process involved several milestones through which the department noted gaps, uncharted opportunities, and set up aspirational goals to be achieved over the next 10 years. The planning process identified 9 goals to be achieved through this master plan. Besides guiding the vision and development of parks, recreation, cultural resources, and the greenway system, the plan provides a framework for the staff, elected officials, and the community to make informed decisions about the growth of the system to respond to the needs and desires of the changing and growing community. Furthermore, assessing demographic shifts, recreation trends, current needs, and projected needs for future recreation set the framework to develop an implementation and action plan that aligns with Game Plan Apex and in turn can help the town qualify for accessing certain funding resources. The project team conducted site visits to existing parks and greenways, reviewed the previous planning efforts, and conducted a thorough inventory and assessment of the current system. The town has an evolving and expanding greenway system of just over 25 miles on the ground and currently over 6 miles to be constructed by subdivision developers. There are additional 4+ miles scheduled to start construction in the coming year, funded by the town along with Bay County and federal grants. New design standards are being implemented on newer sections to develop a consistent and cohesive connected greenway system. Later in this meeting, you will review the bike ped amendments that are a product of master plan's recommendations, including 3 corridors with feasibility studies, where feasibility studies were completed, projects that were prioritized under the new greenway matrix, and others that fill the gaps and create additional connectivity through the town. Town of Apex has high-quality parks distributed across the geographic extents of the town. These parks are well loved by the community for their unique amenities, highlighting the need for renovations and improvements to continue to provide high-quality experiences for residents. As the town continues to grow, the department has been proactive in acquiring future parkland to meet the demands of new residents. Previously known as land acquisition areas that were identified to fill location gaps in park offerings through development, this plan instead proposes targeted parkland search areas identified to provide parks within 10-minute walk and 5-minute drive from current residents. While these proposed search areas appear smaller, there are more of them, and they additionally provide park access to underserved areas for all populations of all races and socioeconomic status. These are not the only areas where parkland could be pursued, but they are a starting point to consider equitable access to recreation and identify the first places the staff could consider identifying parkland opportunities. The future parks and facilities could be passive recreation, protected sensitive habitat areas, active recreation, and even public-private partnerships to provide new and unique opportunities for all Apex residents. The boundaries for search areas should be considered general guidance and not absolute, and they will be contextualized with regards to future development, land use, growth patterns, demographics, and most importantly, the community needs. Town of Apex has a community center, a historic cultural arts center, and a new senior center for indoor facility recreation offerings. These centers provide diverse program offerings for Apex residents. With a shift of much of the recreation programming for seniors to the senior center, there is an opportunity to expand additional programs for other interests and age groups at the community center. This exercise identified that indoor space is needed to accommodate interests of residents, as many indoor programming have wait lists and space is not always available to offer new and needed programs. New and adaptive space is the key for the department to provide much needed programming space, as identified needs for full day camps, environmental education, and revenue generating offerings. Utilizing existing parks, undeveloped town-owned parkland, and approved development as a base for how to provide these needed facilities also allows staff to continue to plan for future facilities. But this will not limit the staff in identifying other opportunities if they become available. The town's future land use plan also shows properties as parks, public or private, that could be considered, and as the town continues to grow, additional areas could be considered. The planning process included a robust community engagement from structured open houses, public events, online surveys, focus groups, public input meetings, as well as administering a scientific survey to make sure diversity of voices from the communities are heard. The process included more than 1,800 touch points with the community. The community engagement efforts, work session with the staff, advisory commission, and the town council revealed consistent themes that informed the guiding principles of this plan. The visioning sessions founded the basis for recommendations and action items by discussing big ideas, the challenges, and strategies to remediate those challenges. The three overarching themes that emerged in the planning process included expand, experience, and excel. Under the expand theme, we have connectivity, recreation offerings, culture of belonging, and environmental stewardship. With the growing population comes the demand and need for additional parks and recreation programs. The Apex community also expressed a strong desire for expanding Greenway network, commitment to environmental sustainability initiatives, and strengthening the culture of belonging. Under experience, we have health and well-being, sense of community, and unique to Apex. The Apex community wants to experience amenities and programs that are unique to Apex, that celebrate Apex's culture and history and brings the community together. Under Excel, operations efficiency and customer service are the two recommendations. The PRCR department wants to achieve operational efficiency as it continues to evolve and provide excellent customer service. The three major areas of recommendations that will transform the scene of recreation in Apex include greenways, future parkland, and recreation programming. The action item for these projects will range from design and construction of greenway corridors, master plans for new projects in Western Apex, feasibility and design of new indoor facilities, and developing new environmental sustainability initiatives, policies for program fee structure, and volunteer programs for the department. Expanding greenway connectivity emerged as the topmost desire in almost all of the community touch points, with consensus across staff, advisory commission members, and town council. A newly developed prioritization tool identified the corridors that need to be at the top of the list to leverage to meet the needs of residents while providing multitude of benefits of connectivity in our community, and Matrix will be used to continue the efforts of expansion of the system throughout the town. Specific bike ped amendments will be presented by staff later in tonight's meeting, which align with the recommendations of Bike Ped Apex, along with those which scored highest in our prioritization matrix. Developing and expanding the current parks amenities and programs for growing population is an important consideration of this master plan. The project team identified geographic gaps in the growing areas of the town where there will be a need for new parks and indoor facilities. At the end of the 10-year Lifetime of this project, the town will see significant additions to the park system, including park master plans for the 2 acquired properties in Western Apex, new indoor recreation facilities. These spaces could potentially include new outdoor classrooms for nature-based programs, multi-sports courts, multi-functional large open spaces, and community gardens. The staff will be presenting location-specific parkland and indoor facility search areas as a separate presentation in tonight's meeting. And last but not the least, residents will get to experience the development of new recreation and cultural programs or the adaptation of existing ones that tie in with the guiding principles of this plan, offering multiple benefits such as programs for all age groups and ability levels, and interests that promote a sense of community, offer an active lifestyle, and educate the younger generation about taking care of our natural resources. The plan recommendations also identify the need for additional staffing with a focus on partnerships and volunteerism. More than 30 recommendations and 150 action items are included in the implementation and action plan that align under these 9 guiding principles. The implementation plan includes prioritization guidelines along with 4 pathways to implement each action item. Over the course of 10 years, the guiding principles will remain as they are rooted in the community values. While the action items may change, priorities may shift, and new funding sources may be identified. Needs identified during the master planning process have already been incorporated into current efforts, such as the priority matrix for Greenway feasibility studies, design dollars in the proposed budget for the Environmental Education Center, full-day trackout camps, policy and procedures update, and revenue generating opportunities. The master plan provides directives that evaluate what we are doing and how we are doing it on an annual basis. The Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources staff will utilize the implementation and action plan in tandem with Game Plan Apex to guide their work plan, setting attainable goals, and developing a budget that results in measurable outcomes and clearly identifying accomplishments and challenges while responding to resident input and needs assessment in an adaptive and responsive manner.
The Master Plan for Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, Greenways, and Open Space aims to expand the opportunities for parks, recreation, and cultural amenities and programming for the entire Apex community. Starting with a reality-based planning approach, the proposed master plan provides a balance of the current needs and desires of our residents with visionary and aspirational goals aligning with Game Plan Apex. As the town continues to grow, it must proactively plan to ensure the needs of the community will be met. Strategic planning that involves appropriate staffing allocation, funding resources, and effective business decisions will be required to implement the recommendations and action items in this plan. Systematic and annual assessments of current recreation and culture offerings, asset management, and best management practices ensure sound operations will allow the Parks, Recreation, Culture Resources Department to meet the demands of the community. Continued collaboration with other town departments, adjacent jurisdictions, Wake County, local businesses, special interest groups, and third-party recreation providers will be critical to serve our community. The department, with support from town leadership, will require focus on its aspirational goals, which will be achieved through visionary decisions, innovative actions, and measured risk-taking to support our motto, the peak of good living. Staff is recommending adoption of the Master Plan for Parks, Recreation, Culture Resources, Greenways, and Open Space. The Parks, Recreation, Culture Resources Advisory Commission unanimously recommended adoption of the Master Plan at their November 30th, 2022 meeting, and the Planning Board reviewed and discussed the Master Plan at their May 8th, 2023 meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. It's been a lot of work, right? Going into this. All right. So let's open it up for any questions at this time for Angela or Shweta? Any questions?
Not really. I mean, we had a work session about the master plan. It was a month or two ago at this point, right? That was, an excellent opportunity for us to, dig into it and see what's coming, and see we're going to go into some of the details actually in the next couple public hearings. So I'll reserve my question until then and just say, thank you for all your hard work. I know it's been well over a year, I think, that you guys have been working on this, and I think this puts us in a good position going forward. And I look forward to seeing a lot of these parks come to fruition.
Okay. Anyone else?
Let me just echo that, like I stated in my January introduction, like one of the things I do care about a lot is public parks and public spaces. And so seeing this vision being updated, reflecting the new and different needs of Apex, I think is very exciting. So very glad to see this. Obviously, a lot of questions and discussion had a month or two ago during that work session. So thank you, and no further questions at this point.
Thank you, Councilman.
I'll add that I'm exhausted just thinking about the amount of work that went into this project. The one thing I'm most excited about is through this effort was the way you're kind of able to prioritize the Greenway projects and the park projects in a way that it's numbers based. It's not necessarily like who we hear from last. It's about you've analyzed all this together, put together a matrix that kind of the best projects rise to the top. And I'm excited about having that as part of this process to, I think, best use the money that we raise through taxes and developer fees to do the best projects that we can for the people of Apex.
Yeah, I love how comprehensive it is, and it's responding to to a growing town, and the differences in small town needs versus we're getting to the point where we would not be considered a small town anymore. So even though we love the feel of it, it's very different. So the needs of the diverse population that we have at this point.
This is a plan that the people of Apex can truly just call theirs. I mean, over 1,800 touch points, town hall meetings, open houses, special events. This is something that's not just an accumulation of, a few, but it's really a reflection of the values of the community. So this is something that the community can embrace because they created it.
I actually do have one question.
Okay.
It might be better to bring up now. We're going to talk in a second about all the amendments for areas for land acquisition. But for right now, I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on what exactly does that mean from a policy perspective when we adopt a big oval for, parkland search area for acquisition? What practically does that mean? Like, is our real estate guy going to go out tomorrow and do it? Like, the answer is no, right? But are we going to opportunistically grab land, purchase land when we can from as it comes up for sale? If a big development gets proposed in that area, does our staff then have the directive to talk to them about selling us land for a park or something like that? So what does this actually mean for people who might live in that area and are curious as to what exactly the town is doing here?
So first of all, we have these areas currently identified on our plan, and what we're looking at is amending those as a part of this process based on several metrics that we used. But the policy for what happens within those boundaries doesn't change from what we do today. So on our plan today and on our plan in the future, if we designate these areas, they go through the process that the UDO and legislation that we have spells out, which is identifying land for dedication as a first thought. If a project is very large and would fit in an area identified, then it's more likely that we would try to figure out, based on the number of units, the size of the property, and all of the things that are written in our UDO of how we evaluate that, whether or not that's something that we would like to see a park, whether or not we work with the developer and say, would you propose to do a park here? And we go through the process that we do with TRC for rezonings and the same way that we do today. The thing is, we've targeted these areas differently based on measurements that we have now, the 5-minute walk, a 5-minute drive, the 10-minute walk. But any parcel we have the potential, we're going to look at it. And these are target areas because they are deficient in providing services, but at the same time, the policy stays the same in what we're doing today.
But to be clear, that policy, so I'm thinking of the homeowner who owns one of these parcels, and they see the town pass a map that has a big circle over them, that makes people nervous. So I just want to be clear about what's going on. Nothing's really changing. It's not changing what you can do with your property. It's not devaluing your property. It's not saying it has to be a park. What we're saying is we're interested in building a park in that broad area. And if there were to be a development proposed, we would look at a potential dedication in that area as we do today in the UDO.
Right.
What I'm trying to make.
Right.
Can I add to that? Because when I saw it was a 3-2 vote for one of the meetings, I went back and watched it. Because I was intrigued. Like, there's not a lot of 3-2 votes, I don't think, in the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission. So they were saying, like, we're going from a kind of a big wide circle to a small, like, more targeted circle or oval, whatever. And there was a concern about kind of targeting parcels, and I was like, that big wide circle is kind of useless, right? Like, it's like, oh, most of town is covered in a circle. Like, what's the point? Too, I was thinking about when it's a little more targeted, you're thinking about where the park is needed, but also it puts a little, not individual landowners, but kind of the general area on notice. Like, yeah, we're really thinking about a park here. Like, I think it's more useful to have the smaller circles, and so. I noticed that the smaller circles are what passed, and that's what we're being presented with today. And I think it's a good change to have that. We're not doing, we're not identifying a parcel directly. That would be, I think, inappropriate because, who knows what's going to happen with these things. But like, it's targeted, but not too much, I thought, personally.
The point I'm just trying to make is that it doesn't affect what you can do with your land, right? It's not removing the ability to do other stuff. It's just saying this is where the town wants to build.
Right, and it helps inform staff, I think, that, to what to ask for, kind of how hard to push maybe a little bit even too, about fee and lose versus land. And I think when they're in that circle and it's a good spot, I think the land is much more desirable than the fee and lieu, even if it's the same value personally. So anyway, I was intrigued by the vote, and I was like, huh. So I think we're on the right track here personally.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item. No one has signed up for this one to speak, so we'll close public hearing.
Are we waiting for all of them?
Yeah, I guess we're combining those. Want to combine them? Is that what we're doing? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're good anyways because no one has signed up for either one. So come on up for the second one.
Public hearing number 2 is for proposed amendments to areas identified to search for future parkland, along with additions of new areas identified as being needed for indoor recreation facilities. This map shows land acquisition areas per the 2013 adopted plan, as well as new parkland and indoor facility search areas. In order to understand if the parks and facilities are equitably distributed across the planning boundary of the town, and if they provide fair access to recreation opportunities for all residents, the project team conducted a gap analysis using GIS. The framework for assessment was based on National Recreation and Parks Association's 10-minute walk to a park criteria and 5-minute drive time. Identification of socially vulnerable areas of the town based on CDC indicators, access to nature, and play equity. These metrics take physical barriers such as roads, highways, riparian buffers into consideration. Overlaying these metrics help the team identify underserved areas in the town where parks and recreation amenities are needed. The result is the Parks and Indoor Facilities Search Area Map. This map will be a guide for the town to begin the discussion about future parkland search areas. The boundaries for search areas should be considered general guidance and not absolute, and should be contextualized with regard to future development, land use, growth patterns, demographics, and most importantly, community need. The current master plan shows 5 land acquisition boundaries which were identified in 2013 to fill underserved areas based on future growth, areas that were undeveloped or underdeveloped at the time. Potential of available land and community needs assessments, which resulted in the location and acquisition of Pleasant Park, Wimberley Road future parkland, and the future Olive Farm Park. The first amendment is a request to remove these boundaries. The following set of proposed amendments identifies the addition of 7 future park search areas. Amendment 2A is an area generally located adjacent and east of the future Wimberley Road parkland, east of Green Level Church Road, north of Jenks Road, and south of White Oak Creek. Area 2B is generally located south of Highway 64, crossing the American Tobacco Trail and Olive Chapel Road, east of the Wake-Chatham County line. Amendment 2C is an area generally located at the intersection of Hume Olive Road and New Hill Olive Chapel Road west of future Olive Farm Park. Amendment 2D is an area generally located on the old US 1 CSX rail corridor and south to US Highway 1, east of New Hill Holloman Road and west of Friendship Road. Amendment 2E is area generally located within the Viridia SD plan area south of US Highway 1, east of North Carolina 540 and west of Highway 55. And as an added note, the Viridia project does have conditions within their approved SD plan that require dedication of land. So that's part of the reason this area was identified
Can I ask
previously.
you about that real quick? Is it one kind of, does it say one big park, or is it kind of, could it be?
It allows it to be broken up, but they have to provide a parks master plan to the town to review and be approved.
Okay.
Amendment 2F is an area generally located northwest of the future Fenton Grove High School and southeast of Lufkin Road Middle School and south of 1010 Road. And Area 2G is, Amendment 2G is an area generally southwest of Salem Elementary School, east of North Beaver Creek Greenway, and north of 64. Are there any questions on the map amendments, this part?
You want to take questions now?
I figured these are separated into two groups, so it might be easier.
So I noticed that two of the search areas are next to existing park land, so the Olive Farm and the Wembley Park. So if there's already parkland established, why would we establish another search area right next to it?
So some of that, again, is based on road. Sometimes a road could be, major road corridor could be between the two, so even though the land areas seem adjacent. In this case, Salem Pond Park is there, but it's fully developed, so we don't have any more opportunity there, but we have growth around it, and so this would fill a gap on a different section that doesn't have access, that might be constrained by roads to have the 10-minute walk or the 5-minute drive. Some of it is also, when we looked at it, was the ability to potentially continue to expand that existing park. Wimberley Road is one that we have continued to add parcels over time, one through land dedication, another we purchased through watershed protection, and another we were looking at purchasing from a seller that's adjacent to it. So some of it's to be able to continue to expand the facilities that we have. So it's a combination of those, each one's different.
Can you pull up 2C for a moment? Yeah. Again, just to illustrate, so you got Olive Farm Park to the right of the picture here, right? And then the search area is right next to it. And so, yes, there's a road kind of going through the middle of the circle there, but part of the circle is clearly like on the side of the road where the existing park is being built right now.
Correct. So between Olive Farm Park, the future park, all the land between that and the other circle is already approved for development. And then this is on your future land use map as a recreation activity center. So this is the site where we considered the potential of a partnership for a recreation-based programming opportunity. Something like Barker Road travels to Pool Road out to Jordan Lake. Somebody could create a facility that we could do a paddleboard rental program or a learn to kayak. So it might be a partnership in a business. So this just identified that that was a recreation activity center, and there might be a way to partner on one of those, more of an indoor, outdoor experience kind of partnership.
Thank you.
Sure. Do you have any questions, other ones?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, moving on. The next set of proposed amendments identifies the addition of search locations for 4 indoor recreation facilities. Amendment 3A is an area generally located within property identified as future Wimberley Road Parkland on the east side of Wimberley Road, north of Jenks Road, and south of Green Level West Road. Amendment 3B is an area generally located within the Apex Nature Park at 2600 Evans Road or in adjacent properties that have not had any development. Amendment 3C is an area generally located within property identified as the future Olive Farm Park near the intersection of Olive Farm Road and Hume Olive Road. And Amendment 3D is an area generally located within the Viridia SD Plan area, south of US Highway 1, west of Highway 55, and north and east of NC 540 as identified as a requirement in the approved Viridia SD Plan. The Parks Recreation Advisory Commission recommended approval of these amendments at their April 26, 2023 meeting. There was not a unanimous vote for all recommendations. The amendment to remove 5 existing land acquisition areas passed 3-2, with the dissenting votes were concerned about the reduction in specific target areas that were proposed. The 7 amendments which located future parkland search areas passed 4-1. The same concerns were raised about reducing the search areas and targeting individual properties versus wider range of possible land options. The 4 amendments which located future indoor recreation facility search areas passed unanimously. Staff recommends the proposed amendments, including the removal and relocation of areas identified for parkland acquisition and the addition of areas identified as being needed for indoor recreation facilities, concurrent with the adoption of the Master Plan for Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, Greenways, and Open Space. These amendments were also presented to the Planning Board on May 8th, and they recommended the amendments with a 4-1 vote to approve. The dissenting vote did not agree with the narrowing of the current zones to just a few property owners, restricting and possibly reducing property value. That's the end of public hearing 2.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Rinky. Any questions? Comments? Okay, we'll move on to number 3.
Okay. Public hearing number 3 is for proposed amendments to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Systems Plan map as a result of the public engagement and input that has been identified in recommendations and implementation and action plan proposed in the Master Plan for Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, Greenways, and Open Space. Proposed amendments address alignment changes that were recommended based on public input and requests for greenway connectivity and that provide opportunities to complete corridors that would not be possible based on existing development. The public was engaged through maps and surveys during the public engagement and input opportunities for the master plan update. Feasibility studies were completed for Reedy Branch, Beaver Creek, and Big Branch as they were the top scoring corridors from our newly developed prioritization matrix. Adjacent residents were sent notifications prior to the field studies, and we received input from both residents and HOA representatives of those communities. Staff has grouped the recommendation amendments into 3 categories. This is a general map overview of all the amendments spread out so that you can get a feel for them as we get started. The 3 categories include providing connectivity to the existing system. Items in this category fill gaps in the current system. The second category is existing or planned development. Item in this category provides connectivity based on development patterns that have appeared through planned projects that might not have approvals, but sufficient information or public input has been provided that identifies an opportunity for a connection. And the third item is added or amended based on the feasibility studies. Items in this category amends a proposed alignment and either connects projects that might not have been available or identified as possibilities in the past, or removes an alignment that cannot be constructed due to site issues and constraints. There are 14 items, amendments numbered 1 through 14. And if you want, we'll stop on each one because these tend to have more questions. So if you have any, let me know as we go along. All right. Amendment 1 adds proposed greenway sections that connect Wimberley Road to the American Tobacco Trail north of 815 Wimberley Road, and adds a north to south connection that connects to existing greenway at Castleberry Trails. The NCDOT Rail Division prefers offset crossings of the ATT, and proposed alignment utilizes an existing access easement for existing homes that would likely be converted if redevelopment occurred in this area. This is why the connection does not align directly with the current White Oak Creek Greenway tie-in at Weddington to the east. The Castleberry subdivisions have existing greenway that runs north to south, and this trail would provide connectivity if these rural properties were to redevelop. The proposed greenways will allow subdivisions on the west side of Wimberley to connect at several key points between the ATT trailhead at Wimberley Road and Green Level West Road, as connections to the ATT are limited by NCDOT. Any questions? Great. Amendment 2 adds a proposed greenway segment just south of the intersection of the American Tobacco Trail and Wimberley Road. The section would run east along an access easement through Army Corps land and crossing a Colonial Pipeline easement to the former Williams Tract parcel, which is part of the future Wimberley Road parkland. The town has a recorded access easement with 2 bridges that follows this alignment from Wimberley Road into the Williams Tract. Any questions?
Questions?
Amendment 3 adds proposed side path along the east side of Holt Road between Old Jenks Road and Howell Road, as it will expand bike pedestrian connectivity in this area as new residential projects have been developed. Planning staff indicated their preference was for the side path to be on the east side of Holt Road, as it would likely occur with the redevelopment of that area if it occurred in the future. This area has existing columns and fence along most of the proposed corridor, which could remain depending on the ultimate width of the side path. On this item, the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Commission asked that staff evaluate adding proposed side path along the north side of Old Jenks from Holt Road to the school site. It was agreed that we would evaluate that for a future amendment, if possible. Any questions? Amendment 4 realigns South Walk proposed greenway. By moving the greenway alignment that connects Apex Peakway towards Gumdrop Path, the greenway would run along the north side of the stream, connecting at the Peakway near the intersection with Grappenhall Drive. South Walk is consistently a high request corridor, and there is no way to complete the greenway as currently shown as long as the Shangri-La Mobile Home Park remains. There are segments along the proposed corridor where easement was not recorded with development near Gumdrop Path. The proposed alignment would provide a route that could be built without impacting or needing to remove existing development.
Is this going to interfere with the extension of the Justice Heights Road? Or will it run alongside?
It'll be helped by it, I think.
It would be adjacent to it.
Yeah.
Because that
They'll be able to utilize
little
the
piece right here, so
corridor.
Justice Heights will connect right where Grappenhall connects with the Peakway?
We're running below that.
Right.
Any other questions? Amendment 5 adds proposed greenway from Chapel Ridge Road heading east to intersect with Beaver Creek North Greenway. The proposed greenway segment provides connectivity to Beaver Creek North Greenway from proposed side path along Chapel Ridge Road. You may notice that the proposed alignment could fall within development that is in review with TRC currently. Staff is exploring alternate alignments offline with development in process, as well as looking at alternate routes. This alignment proposed offers a chance to potentially provide greenway within proposed development if that is available, but also allows the flexibility to include with future development to the north if it cannot be worked out due to slope repairing areas and the Colonial Pipeline easement that runs in this area. Any questions?
Actually, I do have one. I asked that developers of that development about somehow to get to the Greenway connection, and my understanding is it's been approved. The plans have been approved before this has been passed. So, like, did we miss out on having this not on our plan before, and like working with them to get at least part of this built when they were doing the townhomes there?
So we've had calls with the Colonial Pipeline folks to see about whether or not we could get into their easement at all, as well as talk to the engineer for the developer to the south. You have a development project to the north. So right now we're trying to see if there's any way to fit into any of those. There are some slope issues there. There's some riparian areas. So we're trying to still work on the best, but the idea is if we put it where we're showing it, it gives us an opportunity to move north or south if we can fit it to the south. While they're working on their phase 3 of their project, that is a possibility.
Isn't there a pond?
There is a pond,
Okay.
but there's a way to go around it.
Okay.
But usually we have alignments like this that sort of sit on property lines, and then they get adjusted as the development plan comes in. And so we feel like this is that chance to do that. Amendment 6 proposes the realignment of Reedy Branch Greenway, shifting the greenway to the south of Reedy Branch from Kelly Road to Rothwood Way. The alignment proposed is the result of an on-site feasibility study which determined that access from Abington was not possible due to frequent flooding and constrained access easements that would not be accessible or constructible adjacent to existing houses. It also adds Creekside Commons and Homestead Park proposed greenway accesses, removes an Abington proposed greenway access, but providing connections from sidewalk along Kelly Road and Rothwood Way to the corridor. It adds Stratford at Abington proposed greenway access at Rothwood Way, connecting to currently proposed greenway that extends and joins the existing Reedy Branch Greenway Trail at Goliath Lane. The proposed alignment shifts the greenway south of Reedy Branch to mitigate some of the potential issues, which also offers opportunities to connect to neighborhoods that did not have previously planned connections. And from feedback from residents, the proposed alignment that's been on the plans for 10 years or more would run right in the middle of the water area that you see in both of those pictures. And there's about a 20-foot grade change from that area up to the street on a narrow easement that has a 18 to 20-inch storm sewer pipe in the middle of it, so we would not be able to be on top of it. In addition to that, most of the greenway alignment with the shared sewer easement runs parallel to the floodway that's on the lower map. And so it would be very difficult for us to get FEMA approval for that. So this one just had some more info because there were so many changes. Any questions? All right. Amendment 7 adds proposed greenway within Apex Nature Park, linking existing trail near the park entrance at 2600 Evans Road through the park and extending west to proposed greenway along the Beaver Creek corridor with a realignment of proposed greenway connection access from Bella Casa. The addition of the proposed greenway improves bike pedestrian circulation within the park and fills a gap between planned and constructed greenway segments. As a part of the feasibility study, staff and consultants examined several alignments through the park, including a connection near the turnaround for the restroom amphitheater. With the increased traffic that a future environmental education building would bring, staff was concerned that there would be a bicycle pedestrian conflict in that area. So we moved the trail to the perimeter of the park. There is a berm with plantings along much of the southern property line, so many of the adjacent homes will not be in direct view of the trail. There are numerous environmentally sensitive and low-lying, continuously wet areas within the park, as well, so much of the property is also in conservation easements, which limits where we can construct trail in the future. And again, this was from a feasibility study. Any questions? Amendment 8 is also based on feasibility study and adds a proposed grade-separated bike ped crossing at the intersection of Richardson Road, which is an NCDOT maintained road, and Beaver Creek Greenway. The addition of the proposed crossing is proposed to improve the safety of the crossing at the build-out of Richardson Road as a 4-lane median divided thoroughfare. Richardson Road frequently floods at the creek, and the grade-separated crossing will likely require a cost-sharing agreement between the town and NCDOT when Richardson Road and the bridge are improved, similar to what occurred with Apex Barbecue Road and Kelly Road to the east.
I want to ask about grade separated crossings a little bit, just in general. I consider the at-grade crossing of Beaver Creek Greenway at the Peakway to have been a mistake, and I think now we're hearing, I think it would have been great if the Reedy Branch one would have gone underneath Richardson Road. It's at the Smith Farm development. So were those possible and we just didn't have it on our map, or was it just non-feasible in those cases? And we're trying to think more, I mean, or is this feasible even too? I mean, I'm trying to figure out why we didn't do it, and now I wish we had done it, but we're doing it now.
Obviously, the Beaver Creek was done on the Peakway years ago, and I know some of that we didn't even end up with the trail in the original alignment from J.C. Park, which would have been under the Peakway into that area, because, I mean, we have a neighborhood connection that's not accessible on one side, and we had to go to sidewalk to continue that from the Peakway down to the Greenway on the other side. And I think at the time, what I have heard and what I've been able to see was that segment, for whatever reason, was not constructible. From the end of where it terminates into up to is it Grafton Hall on one side and I don't know the name of the street, but towards J.C. Park. The Smith Farm crossing, the Reedy Branch of Richardson Road, the original alignment for Reedy Branch showed it staying in the creek corridor to connect to the ATT. That area is almost always underwater. And so the developer at the time had done some survey, and we were having conversations with the NC Rail division folks about how many connections and what connections we could make to the ATT. And so that location where there was a corridor of wetlands and core land or whatever was a place where they weren't going to allow us to make a connection because of the grade separations in the water between the trail and where we would connect to the ATT. They used an old road to connect in Smith Farm to the ATT, which we got special permission to have it be not a 90-degree intersection. But because it shifted out of that creek corridor, it moved upland, if you will, into higher land. And at that point, it became that mid-block median connection crossing at the south end.
Okay.
Partly because we weren't going straight, we were going to the north anyway.
Okay. I mean, I think I get all that. I think there are some, in theory, some short-term gains by utilizing what we have, but like I know with the Peakway one, when that bridge is open, there's gonna be a lot of cars conflicting with people on that greenway, and it's gonna be hard to cross. And so I just in long term it would be better to do a different way, and I'm glad we're doing this now. I guess is more or less.
We've added a few over the last couple of years. I think we're getting better at identifying where we see a future conflict before there really is one.
Yeah.
So.
Good.
It's hard to predict the future and knowing exactly where these are going to go and how the development is going to occur around it. So.
Yeah, Peakway was on the plans for like 50 years. That we should have tried to think that through a little better, in my opinion. The other one maybe is a little harder with the ATT, but yeah.
All right. Amendment 9 adds proposed street side greenway along the north side of Barker Road between the Chatham County line and New Hill Olive Chapel Road. This provides bike ped access from the Recreation Activity Center planned at Hume Olive and New Hill Olive Chapel Roads and the southern terminus of the ATT corridor that Wake County has easements. It could connect into Chatham County, ultimately providing access to Jordan Lake at Pool Road. Chatham County currently has no greenway plans east of the lake adjacent to Town of Apex jurisdiction, but with the request for access to water being a high priority of residents during the master plan process, as well as the Great Trail State Plan indicating that bike access to the lake was desired by many residents, this western connection could provide assistance in making access to water possible. Amendment 10 adds proposed greenway connection connecting the future Olive Farm Park to a proposed side path within the Retreat at Friendship Station project within parkland that's to be dedicated with the development project and ties to side path connecting to the Little Beaver Creek Trail corridor. Amendment 11 adds proposed greenway that starts at the eastern terminus of Padstone Drive heading southwest along the north side of Big Branch, then splits after it crosses Flint Valley Lane. Its two ends terminate at the grade-separated crossing at South Salem Street across from Depot 499 and at the side path along the future extension of Widger Lane. This area has no public park or greenway access, and this proposed alignment will provide connectivity to two elementary schools, links to two grade-separated crossings of CSX rail corridor, along with Big Branch Greenway, and provides connections to downtown Apex Viridia transit stops and more.
I don't understand this one, guys. Why was this not on the plan before when they built Salem Village? Because it's a relatively new neighborhood compared to our plans, right? So like what happened there?
It wasn't in the 2013 plan. I don't know the time frame of exactly when Salem Village came online, but it's open space owned by the HOA, and we saw the potential now, so we're hopeful.
Is there a way to connect it to all the way to Apex Elementary? So right now, this kind of stops in the middle of the neighborhood, right? And then you can follow the roadways and the sidewalks. But is there a way to kind of utilize like the James Street extension kind of going into the back end of the school?
So we looked in great detail at a much closer ground level, and I don't think we found any possible way. It looks like there's space on the map, but it's James Street extension is driveway access to residential homes. It would be in the street or in the front yard of those single family lots. There's also some grade issues about getting around that sort of this corner here. But this does provide, there's sidewalk connectivity through the neighborhood from this cul-de-sac to this cul-de-sac, and it would be straight up that street. So while it's not full to the school, we also have issues with greenways to the back of school campuses versus side paths to the front door. And this would allow someone who is going to the school to ultimately use the side path on the Peakway and Tingen Road up to the elementary school from the front, which could be a safe route to school because they count when they're on right of way. Amendment 12 adds proposed side path along the east side of East William Street from Sunset Lake Road north to Highway 55 and along the eastern side of Highway 55 to join previously proposed side path south of the future Jesse Drive extension. The addition of the proposed side path will provide bike ped connectivity for several residential areas that could also connect to Verdia Project Future Wake Tech Campus to the west and the Middle Creek Greenway Bike lanes are not proposed along East William Street, and this would complete the corridor from the town's boundaries and aligns with NCDOT plans for HL 007, NC 55 at Technology Drive and East William Street improvements. Amendment.
But there's still no crossing across Highway 55, correct?
I don't know the plan for pedestrian crossings across 55.
It had some dangerous cross diagonal thing that's not gonna work, from what I saw. the similar to the crossing in the front of the Target in Holly Springs, that's nobody uses, but yeah.
If they want to play further.
Well, it would need to be grade separated. But
That'd be preferable, but that wasn't part of their project.
Right. Amendment 13 adds proposed, no, that's the right one. Adds proposed greenway along the east side of a tributary of Middle Creek bordering the future Felton Grove High School north to Stevenson Road and Wild Blossom Drive. It also proposes side path on the south side of the Colby Chase Drive extension east of Smith Road continuing along Rhythm Drive to Stevenson Road. This would provide connectivity to the Middle Creek Greenway. Greenway is planned on the south side of the Felton Grove campus. Our staff continues to pursue trail connections with schools and have been successfully partnering with Wake County Public School staff on connectivity between schools, the neighborhoods, and residents that surround the campuses. While greenways do not provide safe routes to school due to standards and regulations, we are finding alternatives to carpooling where busing is provided and not being utilized. This area of the town's ETJ saw requests for greenways and recreation, and this amendment expands the offerings to the extent possible while also connecting to the school.
is there a way to extend the side path all the way along Colby Chase to the Pemberley neighborhood? So going further to the west?
At this time, I think that's all developed, but
you know,
we could study it.
established sidewalks and developments before, so.
There are sidewalks, I think.
Right now, it doesn't look like there's a sidewalk there. Like the sidewalk seems to stop kind of where the greenway stops.
So the sidewalk stops here with the Pemberley development. It's, there's proposed in the Colby, there's a Colby Chase subdivision that's approved that's not been constructed. And then this is larger lot county lots at this point.
Right.
But we could study.
But it gives a safe route to school from the Pemberley neighborhood if that connectivity was there.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we
we
can
can-
look at the existing conditions and see if sidewalks can fit. It may be hard looking at things like at where the driveways are, but we can take a closer look, and I'd be surprised if side path fit. But we could add sidewalk to the sidewalk needs inventory, capture that as a safe route to school need. On
Thank you.
Colby Chase, right?
Right.
Is this the Horton Park neighborhood?
Horton Park is up here to the north.
Oh.
So
this is
Pemberley's
existing.
over to the left there.
This is Pemberley.
Right, and so Colby Chase, like once that gets opened up, will kind of unlock, because that development from DOT on 55 and Technology Drive is basically going to close off that neighborhood, right? So Colby Chase is going to be a main road out of that neighborhood going forward. It makes sense to put a sidewalk along that path.
It's very narrow. I've seen videos. People have been to our meetings in the past. It's a very narrow road there. Were you there for that? Maybe 2017? Yeah. It's like 20 feet wide, the whole road there. So it's tough.
We have to acquire property.
Yeah, we would have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I'm not.
It's something we can add to the list to look at.
I think it's a really good point.
Yep.
Like with the high school coming, like that
Right,
would be.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that being like a main, exit out of that neighborhood going forward, it makes sense to extend that side path. That's currently on the developed part of Colby Chase and in Pemberley, and then pick it up on the other side again.
It would be a whole road fix. It wouldn't be just the sidewalk. All road would need to be done.
It'd be in the county.
Yeah. Yeah.
Final amendment. Amendment 14 is based on the feasibility study completed for the Big Branch Greenway. This amendment removes proposed Big Branch Greenway between James Street and Apex Peakway, and instead would utilize the proposed side path along the west side of Tingen Road from Apex Peakway to James Street. This change would remove Wake Acres' proposed greenway access and eliminate the need for greenway easement in Golden View. The proposed alignment along Tingen Road side path would provide a direct connection to Apex Elementary School and aligns with the proposed grade-separated crossing of the CSX rail corridor to South Salem Street. The proposed amendment will also include realignment of the proposed Big Branch Greenway to the west side of Big Branch, south of Apex Peakway. This greenway realignment would relocate the Lexington proposed greenway access and add Bradley Terrace proposed greenway access. Helps you see. The existing proposed Big Branch Greenway alignment north of Apex Peakway crosses 9 private residential lots and is located in areas where steep slopes along the corridor, slopes at access locations, stream alignment, and existing sanitary sewer would make construction of trail impossible. Any questions?
So this one I hate, and I'm wondering, are there lessons learned that we can avoid this in future neighborhoods that kind of assess the buildability of a possible greenway, so that when the new neighborhoods develop, we won't have this situation happen again?
Yes, so we have several things in place that would keep this from happening. One is if we identify a shared sanitary sewer greenway corridor, we require a 15-foot addition of greenway or easement width. So if you have a 30-foot sewer corridor and a 20-foot greenway easement, you overlap 5 feet, and so we would have enough space to work. In this location, we have a 20-foot easement that would have to hold both. And we pretty much need to do boardwalk to be able to navigate between there, and we can't build boardwalk on top of sewer. The second thing we have is, our standards now, we're doing dedication up front. They're not in private lots. And when we do a new subdivision, the greenway easement has to be on its own. It can be shared with a utility corridor, but it cannot be within a residential lot. If we look at existing neighborhoods, we can acquire easement in residential lots after the fact, but we don't allow new projects to record easement in private lots.
Going back to Councilman Gann's earlier comments around the crossings, how is that greenway that runs through Salem Village going to cross the Peakway? Because
At the stoplight.
we're kind of,
Right.
there's no stoplight there.
There's gonna be a stoplight, I think.
Right.
Where that's in the middle of there's nothing there. There's Patson Drive is up here, Salem Village Drive is down. Are we gonna put a stoplight in between?
At Tingen and Salem, I think there's a proposed stoplight.
That's
And
right,
Tingen
that-
and
that-
Peakway.
That's here, but the greenway is over here.
Right.
And then
Oh.
crosses over and runs underneath this bubble up to here, right? So there's a crossing, there's a Peakway crossing right here.
Right here.
Yeah.
Okay. When the bridge opens, it'll be another tough area to
I mean,
cross.
we'll have to look at that one as we get there. We'd probably be below road grade at the creeks, so there might be an opportunity to build in a culvert and make it grade separated, but
There's a tunnel there that the creek runs through, so it's already grade separated.
right, you'd have to build a separate,
Right.
further
You gotta
to the
build
east or
another
west
pipe, but
culvert to go under it.
I would anticipate your neighbor, Salem Village residents, once the bridge opens, are going to be in here talking about safety. I can guarantee it. So
I mean, they already did. Like,
yeah, but there's gonna be like the whole neighborhood's going to be here eventually because it's going to be a very difficult place to. They're not used to the number of cars that are going to be on that road in a couple of years.
yeah, there's a crosswalk at the end of Petstone right now, like where Petstone crosses over to Peakway. That one is going to be a concern, and then you got Gately Lane. There's a crosswalk up there too. But yeah, once that bridge open up and increases traffic,
It'll be like 1,000 times
it's
more
be
cars.
another Richardson Road.
They can go on the sidewalk on the south side of Peakway and then cross at Tingen, theoretically.
Yeah, but then you have a section of Greenway that's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
Can we double click on that one too, please? Like the Peakway crossing of this plan.
Yeah, I'll look at studying what that is for a grade separated. All right. Any other questions about, this one had a lot of pieces and parts. Okay. All right. This concludes the presentation on map amendments. The PRCR Advisory Commission unanimously recommended approval of these amendments at their April 26th meeting. PRCR staff and planning staff recommends approval of the proposed amendments, and these amendments were presented to the planning board on May 8th, and they unanimously recommended these amendments. Any further questions?
Well done. All right. Thank you, Angela, Shweta, and of course, Mr. Setzer and Jenna. Thank you for all your work in this process. So we'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item, and no one has signed up, so we'll close public hearings back to council for a motion, possible motion leading to a vote.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, motion to approve, Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It'll be three
Switch.
motions.
Three.
Ooh,
motion
for all three.
For all three.
There you go.
I'll second all three.
All right, motion and second, all
Give
three.
somebody else a chance, man.
Well, I love Greenway, so I wanted to do that. Get a chance.
All right. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, thank you. Are y'all good? You need a break? You good? Everybody good? Want to roll on? Okay, very good. All right, we move now to new business one, Richardson Road traffic safety. And this was something that I asked, of course, with colleagues on council to bring it to the agenda. And what we want to do is, while we have all the council members and the mayor together, I know there's been a lot of communication with the Richardson Road safety issues. We've heard from many residents from the area. We received emails, text messages, social media messages, and it goes on and on. So this has been going on for quite some time. I think where we are now is that elected officials, we're in a position to make a decision, and because it's not going away. So this is where we are today, and we're going to make a decision tonight because we're about solutions. I know that tonight we heard the Peak Academy, one of the Peak Academy students asked, what do I do in my neighborhood if I'm trying to get something done? And sometimes it takes a while. How long did you have to wait? 6 years? 6 years. Yeah. Sometimes it takes 6 months and a year. It all depends. So we're here tonight. We're going to hear from staff about Richardson Road, maybe some information that you don't know about. So we'll hear from that, hear about that. And then we'll bring it back to council for more discussion, leading to a decision. So at this time, does anyone from council have any comments to make or questions before we move on?
Just a comment. I mean, we've heard concerns repeatedly since last year about this, and you know, I'm always of the mindset to try to prevent problems rather than react to problems. And we're hearing concerns. We already know that there were some issues out there. We know there's issues with traffic. Right now it's closed, but that doesn't mean that this problem is going away. That means that when it opens up, there will be even more traffic through this area. So, you know, we just need to discuss it as a council and decide, you know, if we need further information or if we're actually going to, you know, make a decision tonight to change a few things.
I want to add too, just unrelated to the exact issue, is these neighborhoods that are split by the thoroughfares. In this case, we're talking about Smith Farm and Sweetwater, but Salem Village is I just mentioned they're getting ready to get hit too as well. I think there's some planning needs that we need to think about. Like, they should build basically, I think, 2 pools, basically, or amenity centers on each side of those roads so that the desire to cross is less severe. I think that's something that maybe not a zoning thing, but or maybe a zoning thing or a site plan thing is like try to think about when they're splitting roads like this, when it's neighborhoods split like this, to try to think about what people are going to be walking to and trying to make sure it's on both sides where possible.
And I would argue too that it's a good chance to enhance pedestrian safety instead of thinking more about vehicular safety through this area. So it's you know, it's something we need to discuss our thoughts moving forward on these types of issues, because we know, like you said, we're going to see more of it.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, hearing none, we'll ask Mr. Russell Dalton to come up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We do have a presentation plan, and I will try and find it. So tonight I'm going to speak to you about Richardson Road and the concerns we're hearing from the Sweetwater community, leading you through the planning process and things we've done, things we are looking at now, and the future of this corridor. We'll also talk about Vision Zero, the speed limit requests we've had, crosswalks along the roadway, and also address some issues, some concerns that have come to us around Hasse Avenue, which is a major collector street that connects to Richardson Road through Sweetwater. When we're looking at plans like this, these planning and developments come in, there's a local transportation and land use linkage. This area is a suburban context transitioning to rural context. So, you know, one of the things about these type of areas in Advance Apex is we recognize that vehicle priority is high. There's a heavy reliance on vehicles, higher than average volumes are expected on these major roadways, and there's a greater need for access management. So if you look at the corridor, it is a major thoroughfare. There aren't direct driveway accesses along this portion of Richardson Road north of Olive Chapel Road. The transit priority is fairly low. Transit service may or may not be present. Bicycle use is moderate, typically a mix of recreation, utilitarian trips. Those uses may increase near parks and schools and other activity centers. And then pedestrian activity is moderate. So you see pedestrian activity, particularly around the recreation areas, the schools, and the mixed-use centers in these suburban type developments.
Russell, if we go on, it seems to me like part of our issue, especially going forward, is that the Sweetwater neighborhood has features of more of the, I guess, the town center feel, being on a street versus Richardson mostly is like a road. So I think the conflict is because we're kind of in between the two things a little bit here, and like the walkability in the more of the town center part of Sweetwater and what's coming is going to be not conducive to being on a road that where people are going to be, you know, cars are going to be moving through. So I was like, these categories seem like they're melding a little bit to me here, and they will be going forward.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, do you agree? Or is there? I mean,
I think
we mess up. I mean, what happened?
And as we continue through the presentation, we can certainly discuss more. But I think what you're talking about is trying to seek a more urban form rather than a suburban form in a case like this, and try to maybe look at a different application. I just anecdotally, I'll just give you a little bit of information about where. Again, I've told you about where I lived before off Cary Parkway. Cary Parkway, that planned unit development of 2,000 homes was planned back in the late 80s, early 90s. It's a major thoroughfare, 4-lane divided that runs through that area. There in that planned unit development, there are a couple of grade separated pedestrian crossings under the parkway, but it's a corridor that's evolved over time. And when I moved in, there was no sidewalk on my side of the road. They'd since added sidewalk. They've added some traffic signals further down the road to provide more safe crossing opportunities. At no point in the history of my 20 years of living there did they ever add a crosswalk across the road that wasn't at a traffic signal. So, I think with design practices today, a lot of people are trying to apply more urban design to these suburban type corridors, which can be dangerous at times. So we have to be careful about our recommendations, and we do follow certain procedures to make sure that we're making the correct recommendations for safe crossing. So just again, anecdotally, and I've had that experience when that community was built, the YMCA was the community recreation center. That recreation center is across the road from me, a mile down the road. It's across a 4-lane major road. So as I've seen that evolve over time, I'm one of those people that has to navigate across that 45-mile-an-hour 4-lane major roadway. I can choose to do that at a traffic signal where I've got a protected crossing, or I can choose to do that on my bicycle at an intersection that's not marked if I so choose, and that's part of my daily activity.
I guess I'm just annoyed because this is a brand new, unfinished neighborhood versus we've had years and years to learn from those kind of situations. Like, why did this even happen to begin with? I mean, would we have approved this now, this 5-year-old neighborhood? Or I'm confused by the newness and still having the problem we're seeing.
Yeah, again, it is a major thoroughfare on our transportation plan. As we go through the presentation, we'll learn a little bit more about it, and we can talk more about it. But I do understand what you're saying. It's understanding the purpose of the road and the need for the road versus the desire for more urban, slower speed form in the neighborhood.
Okay.
I just want to say it's not unusual that a large planned unit development is developed around a major corridor such as this and has these types of challenges. So we do have a thoroughfare and collector street plan map, which identifies this as a 4-lane median divided roadway with future widening. If you look at our collector streets, those collector streets are laid out based on the context, local connections they make, certain environmental constraints, stakeholder input, and traffic volumes. The thoroughfares are a little bit higher level, so we're actually looking at congestion data, volume to capacity information. These are in the regional model. We're looking at crash data. There are recommendations made in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan that ultimately, that informs the state transportation improvement program. So that comes along with funding implications, long-term planning for those regional connections, and considering that context. And there's also stakeholder input involved in our transportation plan when it comes to these type of roadways as well. And again, roadway engineers use certain guidance. We use the AASHTO Green Book, Roadside Design Guide, DOT's design manual. We use the MUTCD regarding traffic control devices. We have our own standards and specifications, and there are lots of other specialized publications out there that provide guidance, particularly for more urban contexts. There are different types of publications that offer different types of guidance in certain situations. In our geometric standards, thoroughfares are the highest classification, so design speed of 50 miles per hour. And Richardson Road was constructed to meet NCDOT standards to turn over for state maintenance upon completion of the connection to Olive Chapel Road. That's been made now, but as there's currently widening going on the north end, we're working with NCDOT to determine when they could possibly take over the road and all the documentation they're going to need to do that. We also have a Vision Zero action plan, and that's one of the things that has been brought up. That was adopted in August of 2022. We do have a cross-departmental task force that involves planning, traffic, police, communications, and DEI. We meet monthly. We do have 28 actionable strategies in that plan. We look at our 5-year crash data every year, so that's updated in the summer every year. And we also have a high crash and high injury network that helps to inform our decisions on where to prioritize projects and where to focus our efforts. We have a 5E approach also, so it's not just about the engineering, it's also about education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation.
Yeah, I know we're gonna have a table coming up about this particular road, but like does that 5-year span cover, was that road open the whole 5 years of this study? And if a road opens in 2020, how is that evaluated in this 5-year cycle? Is it prorated somehow or whatever?
No, it's the number of crashes. So some things have changed on the corridor in that period of 5 years. So for instance, if a roadway is not open, it would only be number of crashes that have occurred during that period, or crash severity during the period it was open. It's not, you don't add a factor to try and compare it, try to project crashes, in other words.
Okay. You could do average crashes per year, I guess, theoretically.
Yes.
In this context.
Could. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Town staff are part of the Vision Zero Task Force, and we also review site and subdivision plans. We're involved in safety studies, public outreach and recommendations. We're involved in prioritization and funding requests, and we also recommend changes to our standards and best practices to improve safety and efficiency where the issues are identified. We did hire a traffic safety engineer in March, which is now on our team to lead the Vision Zero program. And also Apex Police are actively involved in community outreach, education and enforcement, promoting traffic safety. And until they got involved with the Vision Zero team and I got to see all the stuff they did, I had no idea how many different things the police do. So it's extremely impressive in all the outreach they do for our community and the data analysis and the targeted enforcement they do to try and reduce this high-risk behavior. So regarding the speed limit, it's currently 45 miles per hour, as you know, from US 64 all the way down to Hume Olive Road and beyond, where it stubs out north of the creek in that area. We did a study from October to November 2022. We saw 4,100 vehicles per day on the road, which is relatively low for a major thoroughfare because that corridor, is of course building out. So it will increase over time. Our 85th percentile speed was 45 miles per hour, which means that 15% of the traffic, or around 615 vehicles per day, were exceeding that 45 mile per hour speed limit. The average speed was 39.7 miles per hour, so average was actually a little bit lower than the posted speed. We had 2% of vehicles, which represents 82 vehicles per day based on that volume, that were traveling greater than 50 miles per hour in our speed study. The road is not currently shown on our Vision Zero high injury network, and that was our 2017 to 2022 data. We did see a projected 2035 year traffic volume of 20,300 vehicles per day. So by 2035, we expect it to be about 5 times what it is today, which is more in line with what you would expect on a major thoroughfare. Still under capacity for a 4-lane divided road, but significantly higher volume, more volume than we have on North Salem Street today. And we looked at the rankings of the crashes to try and provide some context here. So from US 64 to Core Bank Street, which is currently being widened, it's 56th out of 1,080 total segments in terms of its crash severity. It's 28th in relation to number of crashes out of those same 1,080 segments. Core Banks to Hasse Avenue is 832nd out of 1,080 segments that were experiencing crashes in Apex. It's 1,078th in terms of the ranking and the number of crashes. And then the next segment below, there is a gap if you're familiar with the corridor south of Hasse Avenue down to Great Lawn Road. There were no reported crashes during our 5-year period. But there were crashes reported from Great Lawn Road, which is Smith Farm, down to Olive Chapel Road. And that was ranked 116th out of 1,080, and then in terms of severity, 199th out of 1,080 in terms of number of crashes.
I guess this is what I was, let me clarify. At what the current status of this road before the construction, when did it open, or when were the houses there and the sidewalks were all there? Like at what time was it ready to roll? Was it the way it is now in July 1st, 2017, or is this only counting like half this time period?
I mean, it's been building out over time. So, and that's one of the challenges on a road that's building out. I don't recall exactly when, off the top of my head, when it was open, the entire route, but it's been open for more than a few years.
Okay.
For the total length.
One question. We're talking about vehicle crashes with this slide, not pedestrian.
All crashes.
All crashes.
Yeah, so they were, and this is out of 6,808 total crashes over a 5-year period, and 270 of that, 4 of those were severe fatal crashes. But this is all types of crashes. So there are, and we have been asked, you know, what is the issue? What are the negative issues with lowering speed limits? There are negative impacts, you know, for lowering posted speed where it doesn't match that suburban thoroughfare design and context. The average driver will have more difficulty complying with your posted speed, so your alignment in suburban environment will not match driver expectation. Longer distance trips are experienced on this corridor versus local streets, so people commuting, people trying to get to appointments aren't going to pay as close attention to a speed limit if it's set very low compared to their expectations. And you'll still see some high, what we consider high speeds, greater than 45 miles per hour, even with a 35 mile per hour posting. So as part of that as well, there are always concerns with, if you do lower the speed limit, is that not just going to generate more requests for police enforcement and outreach resources directed to the corridor to ensure that compliance? And then that's a question of police resources being directed away from other areas of town. And NCDOT also has relayed this regarding the speed limit, which I want to state verbatim because this is what we got from them, and you can interpret as you wish. But they say a reduction probably wouldn't affect the decision to adopt the roadway, but Division Traffic would need to see a traffic study justifying the reduction. If they determine a reduction isn't warranted, they would revert the speed limit back.
Can you speak to the possible impact on Kelly and New Hill Hall Chapel Road? And like, I live in a neighborhood where a neighboring neighborhood fought a connection to the St. Mary's Church school, and I didn't really know that was happening, but what I have found is that it funneled every car in that whole neighborhood through our neighborhood as a result, because they didn't have the natural way to get through. And so I'm wondering this, and maybe the crosswalks, and maybe we heard speed tables and some of the emails. I presume the people that live on Kelly Road and New Hill Hall Chapel would not want that, because it would presumably make cars go that way instead of up this way when they're commuting, and further clog up those areas.
Yeah, again, roadways of this type are supposed to be a high level of mobility for vehicles. It doesn't mean that we ignore pedestrian safety, but we have to be conscious about what we're providing and why we're providing it, understanding the purpose of the roadway. If you don't provide the higher level of mobility for the higher numbers of traffic, I mean, you're talking about 4,100 vehicles per day. Again, that's not a lot, but when you're talking about 20,000 vehicles a day, you're trying to get to their destination. The more you try to stand in between them and their destination with speed calming measures, it makes it more difficult for those commuters, and there are adverse impacts. There are potential adverse impacts from that.
The level of service on Kelly and New Hill of Chapel, I assume, are lower than Richardson right now. Maybe by a long shot, right? I know 751 is a mess, right? We heard about that in that last
intersection 64, but I think Kelly Road, New Hill Hall Chapel in of themselves aren't that bad compared to what you were.
Pre-COVID, Kelly Road was pretty bad. I can tell you that. A little bit throughout recently.
So we have provided existing crosswalks on Richardson Road. So if you look at the drawing here, the signalized crosswalk currently that exists is Olive Chapel Road to Richardson Road. So you are able to cross Richardson Road there at a signal. That was installed by the town, or actually in working with the developer. The signal up at US 64 is being installed with the widening project. So that is a future traffic signal, and there'll be a pedestrian crosswalk as part of that. There is anticipated a traffic signal at Core Banks when warranted, so that is a subject of future study. We anticipate that as the commercial center builds out, that'll generate more traffic volume and help us make a good case for that traffic signal, but it is definitely not warranted today based on that volume. There are existing marked and signed two-stage median protected high visibility crosswalks. Those are the gold standard of crosswalks. That's the safest way to get people across the road. You have a median. People are not having to deal with turning movements. They're negotiating one direction of traffic at a time. They have a median to break up their trip. They're high visibility warning signs. Those were installed, one of them between Core Banks and Hasse Avenue, and then one of them further south. Those were installed at the request of our previous town administration in response to complaints we got from the neighbors and concerns about how do they get safely across the road. Staff investigated these areas and found those were the locations to get people across the road safely. The one furthest, the two-stage crosswalk furthest south again, that was mentioned in a previous presentation for Parks and Rec, that's the Greenway connection, and that was done as part of Smith Farm. And when we have Greenway connections, we try to get people across the road again as safely as possible, and that's a two-stage crosswalk.
Can you speak to how the Core Banks future light will affect the nearby crosswalk?
If a traffic signal was installed providing pedestrian crosswalks, we would recommend removal of that crosswalk, that two-stage crosswalk.
Oh, and put it at the signal?
Yes, we would recommend, yes, the signal would definitely include pedestrian crosswalks, but we would recommend removal of that two-stage crosswalk to the south once the pedestrian crosswalks are installed at the signal. Whether or not that gets removed or not, that's a debate for that time, but we would not want. The signal is considered the safest way to get people across the road, but if you don't have a signal, then we recommend these two-stage crosswalks on major thoroughfares.
But the southern two crosswalks would be unaffected by that signal?
Yes,
presumably.
we would expect
Okay.
those to remain. That's correct.
And so when we say high visibility, what does that entail?
Yeah, so for these high visibility crosswalks, you have the yellow diamond pedestrian warning signs in advance. You have them at the crosswalk with the arrows pointing down to the crosswalk, and you have marked what's called continental style high visibility crosswalk bars, 10 feet by 2 feet bars. And this is on each of the approaches. So on either side of the median, you have those signs.
Is there a standard for like the flashing style crosswalks?
Yeah, we've got that further in the presentation. We discussed that some more. Yeah. So one of the issues about the request for installing crosswalks at Richardson for Core Bank Street and Hasse Avenue is DOT will not approve signed and marked high visibility crosswalks across thoroughfares at unsignalized intersections because you've got turning movement conflicts. And that's one of the issues we've seen. In past years, some have been installed and we've had some issues. We had a pedestrian crash at Sparta Lane not too long ago, where a driver was trying to negotiate a gap to his right, and he turned left across the crosswalk and hit two ladies crossing. We have since, we convened our Vision Zero Task Force. We've reviewed that in detail. We've met with the school. We are removing that crosswalk and we're moving it to a mid-block location north of the median refuge. So those are the kind of things we've dealt with those type crosswalks in the past. So that's why, part of the reason why DOT doesn't recommend them anymore. You put them in, people then complain that drivers aren't yielding and you have collision issues, and then it's really a no-win situation when you have those types. So it's better to avoid those and try to find a mid-block location.
I thought mid-block crossings were bad too. You've told us before that like mid-block crossings, vehicles don't anticipate pedestrians crossing there, right?
We make them as safe as they can possibly be. I will say that if people need to cross the road and we find a need for people to cross the road based on the study, in those cases it would be justified based on the DOT methodology. We looked across the country trying to find the best methodology to study the need for crosswalks and the types of crosswalks to install depending on the types of roadways. We found that DOT had not only the best, but it was the only one we could find. If someone else has better methodology based on research that they can provide us, we'd love to see it, but that's what we found and that's what we use.
So, but these crosswalks that we're talking about here, there's no turning movement by vehicles.
Correct.
So what's the objection against the flashing beacons then?
So there are warrants to the flashing beacons. We plan to study those, and I have it in a later slide. We plan to study those later this year to collect the volume data to see if they're justified based on the standards. If they're not justified based on the standards, we would typically not recommend those because the flashing beacons are there. They are a supplemental warning device, but they're designed for locations where there's a high enough volume and a high enough volume of traffic, high enough pedestrian volume where there are not gaps in traffic. With these crosswalks as they are today, there are gaps in traffic. You can safely make it across the road with the signs that are in place at these crosswalks. If it gets to a point where you got a lot of volume, a lot of pedestrian volume, a lot of traffic volume, and there's not a lot of gaps, pedestrians start taking chances crossing the road, and that's when you need to provide supplemental devices. And that's what the research shows, and that's what the DOT methodology shows. Otherwise, I mean, every crosswalk you have, you're going to install thousands of flashing beacons across town. It's not necessarily making your roadway safer. It's just installing a lot of extra infrastructure to maintain that's not really based on need.
So I guess as long as we're talking about HASI and core banks, like, what's the recommendation there then? Because I understand, you know, I think at some point in the presentation or your remark that, you know, ideally people wouldn't cross there, but they are, right? Like, it's one of those things where we build crosswalks on the places around town where pedestrian traffic is just occurring. We build sidewalks where people are walking alongside the road anyway. Like, us not wanting people to cross there because it's not ideal isn't stopping people from doing it. So what do we do?
So pedestrians, as I note here, pedestrians should be guided to cross these thoroughfares at where there's a median refuge present.
Should we build a median refuge there? We could extend the island. We can put something in there.
They would still be at the intersection. They're still competing with turning movements. They're competing with drivers negotiating gaps on a thoroughfare where traffic is going to continue to increase, and that's putting pedestrians in harm's way. You know, traffic engineering is human factors. We're sending messages to people. When you're driving down the road, that's traffic engineers sending you messages. We've got lights of different colors, different types. We've got signs, we've got markings. When we put in, put in these crosswalk signs, we're sending two different messages to two different people. To drivers, we're sending a message. We're saying pedestrians might be crossing here, use caution. This is where we're telling pedestrians they should cross. To a pedestrian, we're telling them this is where you should cross. You know, this is a safe crossing location. So if you put that at an intersection and you're communicating that to a pedestrian, then that is a concern, because if they're in conflict with turning traffic, you know, no amount of flashing signs or beacons when someone is trying to make a turn and negotiating a gap, are they going to be able to see that pedestrian and make that movement safe?
So is your position then that the only safe way to cross that intersection would be if there was a light there and we could actually stop the traffic?
Correct.
And I think the next slide or this slide says a light's not yet warranted, and we're going to study that eventually.
That's correct, yes.
So if just to walk it down a natural progression, if the study identifies that the light isn't justified and there isn't a recommendation for the light, if a light was placed in there, what's the additional risk that we're looking at? Just to kind of break it down, let's say we really want a light there, and you're like, we don't really need a light there, but we're like, we really want a light there. What are we not looking at in terms of the overall impact? Because I'm sure that there's a reason behind the recommendation.
Yes, so there are risks with traffic signals as well. Traffic signals, actually, they may reduce certain types of accidents, but they may increase other types of accidents. Traffic accidents occur at traffic signals every day. So that's partly why you don't recommend traffic signals everywhere, and that's also research based. That's based on the data. If NCDOT takes over the roadway, then the decision to allow a traffic signal or not allow a traffic signal is up to NCDOT. If we maintain the roadway, then ultimately it's with our staff if we're not looking for DOT to take it over, but it might be a concern for DOT if we're asking them to take over a roadway and we put in an unwarranted traffic signal, because they can just as much as they can say, if you reduce the speed limit, we'll revert it back, they can say, we'll deactivate your traffic signal.
What do we give up if we don't let DOT take over the roadway maintenance and we keep it in our own portfolio?
We have to, I mean, it's the maintenance cost, long-term maintenance cost of that roadway. It's a major roadway, so it's a much higher level of maintenance cost than a typical residential street. And the reimbursements for POW bill that we get are not proportional to maintaining those types of roadways.
I have a question on pedestrian crossings at the crosswalks. How do you measure that in your study? Like, how is that done?
We actually conduct, you're talking about the data, how we collect the data. We use trail cams. So we actually get, footage over multiple days. So it's not specific to necessarily an exact location. We have enough of a field of view to see an area in which pedestrians are crossing in the vicinity of an intersection or vicinity of a park, and we actually run through those images and we do that count. So it goes into the NCDOT methodology, and it goes through and you look at type of roadway and context, speed limit, median or not a median, number of pedestrians, traffic volume, all that information is in there to help us make a decision.
Thanks.
You want to say something? Yeah.
Good evening. So I just wanted to kind of make a few comments because coming from, this is my first time presenting to you also, good evening. But in the last 10 years working in Raleigh and Garner, this is being seen everywhere. This is not unique to Apex. We have the same concerns from residents, same concerns from council members, same concerns from traffic engineers. This is not easy. I understand that. Many years ago, I know one situation which is kind of what I think of similar to this neighborhood. If you go a little further up Green Level Church Road, as you get into Cary, you get into like Greystone area and Cary Park. Those used to be all undeveloped vacant tracks, gravel roads. Now they're 4-lane thoroughfares that actually were one neighborhood split into two, just like Sweetwater. Difference there was they built the roads 4 lanes from the beginning. Here we built 2 at a time with the option to widen later. But at the end of the day, all the traffic engineering and the concerns that you're hearing from staff, they are the same types of objective criteria that's used not just here, but across Wake County, across the state. So just want to make sure that you realize this isn't just Russell Dalton talking. He's following the same standards that everybody else is.
Thank you.
Yep, those are dangerous too, though. I drive that way. They're dangerous in that area because we're crossing all the time on a busy road like this.
Yeah, they're all 45 mile an hour, and he mentioned how Cary Parkway. I live off the Kildare Farm Road. Same exact situation. 45, no crosswalks except for at signals. There's lots of destinations where I have to cross the street and deal with this as the same fashion. It's different neighborhoods where this one is the same neighborhood. It's one. So
I think I read that 5% of NCDOT funding goes to pedestrian parts of the road, by the way. I think it's a problem, but anyway.
So regarding our supplemental measures for our future plans, those existing crosswalks are being considered for supplemental markings and signs this summer to enhance visibility. There are options that we've looked at with enhancing crosswalks. You can do like advanced yield lines for crosswalks help. Supplemental signs in the medians can help improve visibility. You know, it's more visual cues to drivers. For roadways that are carrying more volume and with higher speeds. But again, these are additional supplemental measures. So it's more than what the typical standard would be for this type of application. We'll also be conducting counts this summer, as I discussed, to consider RFB at the existing crosswalks, which again is based on, largely on traffic and pedestrian volume. Based on the NCDOT research, and we'll communicate those findings for a decision on those. Also, supplemental street lighting is planned in June to improve nighttime visibility. That was one of the big concerns that Apex Electric is working on as we speak. Also, as I mentioned, Corbank Street is anticipated to warrant a traffic signal, which will have those signalized crosswalks. We hope to see that in the next couple of years. That area is building out. It was always understood that until that commercial center builds out, you're just not going to have enough traffic volume to generate a warrant for a traffic signal. And then finally, Hasse Avenue is unlikely to warrant a traffic signal based on the anticipated volume there. We can certainly study it longer term in the future as it increases, but it's currently we don't anticipate that. And also regarding Hasse Avenue, because we've had some requests in the neighborhood, so it is a major collector street, 35 mile per hour per ordinance. It was approved prior to the requirement to stripe a center line and offset edge lines. We have been asked by the neighbors about that because further south, where the neighborhood was approved later, it has a center line and edge lines. That would have to be prioritized in the future for installation, but as it is, it's the correct width for a major collector street, just without that striping. There's a speed limit sign request pending for Hasse Avenue and other streets within Sweetwater, and Public Works is currently working on that. Those are the standard speed limit signs that you see in all neighborhoods. Now we've changed our policies over the years to now require developers to install those type of signs. Previously, it was the town responsible for that, so that development was caught in that interim period between when the developer was supposed to install and the town, between the town installed and when the developer was supposed to install. So that's why it was lagging behind that development. Also, in the vicinity of Russet Lane and those playground areas, we will be installing playground warning signs this summer based on our request, because that is standard practice when you have a playground and you have concerns about that type of activity near the roadway. You can install playground warning signs. They are in the MUTCD. Also, we will be doing a pedestrian crossing study this month in response to a request for a crosswalk across Hobbs Avenue in that area. You know, it's not a thoroughfare. It's a lower volume, lower speed type street, more of a local type street, where crosswalks can be provided in those areas safely based on the research. So finally, I'll conclude and see if there are any more questions.
Also, you mentioned a traffic safety engineer that was hired in March. Has that engineer given any feedback on this road design?
He's been involved in our review of the corridor, so he is actually actively involved, will be actively involved in doing all the studies regarding the RFB, the supplemental warnings, and all the measures we're proposing. Regarding the corridor itself, that's probably a larger discussion about major thoroughfare standards and when we expect NCDOT to take over roadways and what we expect those roadways to be in development situations like this. I heard the comment about amenity centers being located on one side of a major thoroughfare for neighbors that have to get across the road. I have had those same concerns before. I don't know if there's an easy answer to that. You'd think building 2 amenity centers would be an easy answer, but that may not be an easy answer, at least not if you talk to developers.
Well, 2 smaller pools, I think, in this case, it's better than
two
one
smaller
big
pool,
yeah.
pools versus a large pool. But there still would be some, we would expect maybe some pedestrian activity crossing the road regardless. But yeah, that's could be something to talk about further.
Any other questions for Mr. Dalton?
Mr. Dalton, one quick question, and this is kind of thinking outside the box. If you've been over on Walnut Street by Cary High School, you know they had a big period of time where people were crossing over Walnut Street to get to the school. They installed a decorative fence in the middle of the median. That seems to have been a pretty good way, for lack of a better word, guiding behavior of pedestrians. Is that something that we should consider for Richardson Road? A fence line along both sides in order to guide pedestrians to crosswalks, in order to essentially make the prediction of pedestrian crossings a little easier?
I would, if we were to recommend anything along those lines, I would want it to be a little bit more passive than a fence. The issue with the fences is when you get to an intersection, people would probably just walk around the fence and cross at the intersection anyway. You could consider certain things like where we're moving the crosswalk on Tingen Road for the elementary school. We plan to do some little paw prints on the sidewalk to guide students to the new mid-block crosswalk. So you can do some things like pedestrian scale signage and maybe some marking on the sidewalk to guide people to the correct place to cross. You know, that might be appropriate in a situation like this, and it's something we can look into as part of those countermeasures.
Because what I'm thinking is kind of just fencing until you get to the crosswalking area.
Yeah, the fencing may be a more effective measure in an area like a school zone where you have a large amount of people trying to cross the road. This is with being a suburban corridor. Again, the volumes of pedestrians, they're out there, but it's relatively low in comparison to those type of areas. So it's more scattered and more difficult to control those type of movements. Also with schools, there's also stronger educational outreach to remind the students, you know, what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I think that also helps when you have those groups trying to cross the road.
I'm just going off a hunch because I attended Cary High School back in the day, that when the bell rings for lunch, people would just go and they would go everywhere. They would cross every which way you could do across Walnut Street. So that's kind of the reason where it's comparing apples to oranges a little bit as far as being inside of a neighborhood versus being right in front of Cary High School.
Other questions?
So I would like your feedback on something too. So growing up in Louisiana, we had a lot of 4-lane highways through a lot of small towns, and you would have a reduction in speed limits as you're going through these areas, especially when there's a lot of housing facing the highways. So it would frequently go from 55 down to 45 down to 35 as it goes through the areas where pedestrians would cross. Is there anything wrong with doing something like that in these areas where we know there are going to be a lot more pedestrians crossing, or amenity centers across the road from Smith Farms through Sweetwater, where we could possibly drop the speed limit down through these areas and then raise it back up across the 64?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's an interesting concept. I mean, I can think about county roads down in Florida that I've been on that do a similar type of thing, where you've got it's typically a really long stretch of roadway where you have those speed changes on the route. I'm not sure what that would do for compliance on a roadway type like this, because you've got such relatively short distances between the intersections to raise and lower the speed limits. Whether or not drivers actually adjust their speed based on that, I'm just not sure that they would.
Well, I mean, to me, it indicates an area where we could possibly increase signage of, awareness of increased pedestrian crossing through this particular area. And, we have the ability to make our own signs, right? We have our own sign shop. So putting something like that in these areas where as we get close to where Smith Farms is, dropping that speed limit down there, keeping it at 35 until you reach 64, and then increasing it. Because this particular area, regardless if we have it or NCDOT takes it over, as all of these shops accumulate and open through this area, it's going to be a much more dangerous corridor for pedestrians if we don't try to do something here. So I'm just concerned that we've had a dog hit, we've had near misses with pedestrians. I don't want to end up with a child being hit trying to cross the road to the pool or to any amenity areas through this area, and we could have reduced the speed limit to prevent it.
I think it's apples and oranges, because I think that's happening mostly because there's a bunch of driveways near cities coming in, and we've purposefully not allowed that here. There's no driveways on purpose.
Can we let Mr. Dalton respond to Mayor Pro Tem real quick?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's the difference between posted speed versus compliance and what you're trying to relay to the driver. So in an area like this, one thing we have done, again, we've got, as drivers are passing through this area, they're seeing 3 high visibility mid-block crosswalks, fairly regularly spaced, in close proximity, along the fringe of these neighborhoods. So as a driver, if you're going through there, that automatically is a visual cue that you should expect more pedestrian activity versus a road out in a rural area. Also, as you approach Sweetwater, as that commercial area builds out, it'll be 4-lane, it'll be more capacity there in terms of the lanes, but there'll also be more traffic congestion there. There'll be a lot more activity there. Drivers will see the taller buildings, and that automatically changes the atmosphere for drivers, where they start to expect more activity in general, more activity not just from vehicles, but also from pedestrians. So it's just the environment itself that provides those cues. I think varying the speed limit, on a route like this is not necessarily going to give you a higher level of safety, and it's going to make, if any difference in compliance, it'll be a marginal difference in compliance based on the data.
I also, I have a question also in regards to, the way we react to things now versus later. So right now, this is a 2-lane road. And right now we have pedestrians that cross back and forth because of traffic levels. Is there anything wrong with having the reduction in speed limit now, and then if we decide to increase this to a 4-lane road in the future, changing that, because at that point we're going to be having eventually lights and everything else at some of these intersections that will guide behavior, I guess you could say, in different ways.
So I guess right now it is being widened to 4-lane north of Core Banks to 64. So that section will be 4-lane. South of there, it transitions, of course, back to that 2-lane section. And then further south, you have the very wide median. So where you're going to have, I suspect, the most issue with compliance is going to be as you get south of Core Banks, out of that commercial area, away from US 64. It's very suburban character type roadway. Again, you're going to have some issues with compliance out there. And if DOT takes over the road, they have said they'll revert the speed limit back. So that is another concern out there that we would have. Yeah.
Do you view setting a speed limit as a prescriptive measure to control speeds, or do you view it as purely a reactive measure to sort of reflect the conditions you see? Because I guess there's a philosophical question there. And I sort of get the impression sometimes that you view speed limits not as something to try to tell people how fast to go, but just to sort of
define what it is.
Say how fast people are going. And it has no power to actually, control the speeds. And I get what you're saying about compliance, but in my mind, granted I'm, not an expert, I'm not trying to say, I'm just logically thinking about it. I imagine there'd be some degree of voluntary compliance when you post the speed. Won't be 100%. Not saying everyone's gonna, suddenly comply. Some people don't care what you post. So yeah, I mean, can you answer that question? Like, what is the philosophy behind setting a speed limit? Is it reactive or is it proactive?
Well, in this case, it's proactive because of the type of facility. So we have design criteria. The intent is it's going to be a major thoroughfare, 45 miles per hour with high vehicular mobility. So the question is, again, if the reactive side of it is if you start seeing issues on the roadway that are causing concern, which other municipalities struggle with as well. Forcing drivers into a mindset of driving a lower speed. You will have, I totally agree, you'll have some drivers that will try to comply with that 35 mile per hour speed limit. You will have others that don't care. And you'll have a lot of people in between that they're on the way to soccer practice, they're on the way to school, and they're not really paying really close attention to what their speed is. And they're on a big major roadway with a big wide median, and their speed's going to drift up to 41, 42, 43 miles an hour before they know it. So that's what you're dealing with. And the question is, is that, do you want to devote, potentially invite more complaints, more requests for police enforcement to force compliance on a roadway that was designed for a higher speed?
So I keep going back to Hasse. I want to call it Haas Avenue, whatever it's called. About the comment I made earlier that there's really no good solution here except a traffic light. And I kind of get what you're saying about, like, if we stripe it and say, hey, we're trying to increase safety by striping it. You made a comment that actually could decrease safety because that would, imply a level of safety that isn't there because you have people turning who are looking for oncoming traffic and they're going around and they get some. I get that. But we have cutouts in the curb for the sidewalk there. Like, doesn't that imply that people should be crossing there? Like, are you saying that's a mistake based on your understanding of how it is? Should we go remove those? Should we put up, we want people to be safe. Like, that doesn't seem to fit with your description of what to do at the intersection.
So every intersection is an unmarked crosswalk. In North Carolina, it is legal. If I want to walk out, which I have done before, cross Cary Parkway, 4-lane divided at an intersection without a crosswalk, I can legally do it. But as a pedestrian, when I see that intersection and I don't see a crosswalk, it sends an immediate cue to me that I need to be watching for traffic because I'm not being told to walk out there in front of traffic and expect that people are going to stop. And that's always the concern. Some pedestrians do a little bit better job than others. Waving to cars, making sure people are yielding. Others don't do quite as good a job. They might be looking at their phone. They might be on their headphones, not paying attention. And when you put them in those situations, when there's a lot of turning movements, you're giving them that extra confidence to step out there into traffic and not pay as close attention as maybe they should be. And that's why we do these 2-stage crosswalks, which, again, we've got 3 of them out there that provide what we would consider safe crossing opportunities. The safest crossing opportunities you're going to have of this road until you get a traffic signal in.
So, I mean, but to answer my question, do we need that cutout? Is there some rule that says, because I understand it's a legal crossing and we can't give people tickets if they do it, but if you're saying it's unsafe and we want to discourage people or encourage them towards the safe two-stage crossing or the eventual lighted core banks, should we remove those? Are we allowed to remove those? Why are those there?
Saying the pedestrian ramps?
Yes, because there's two ramps. There's one heading south, you know, across I guess Little Gem there.
Okay.
And the one point there's 8 of them all together in all directions.
Okay.
We could remove the 4. Should the 4 not be there if that's not safe? Because I think that also says this is a safe place to cross. I think people look at that intersection, they see the ramps, and like, oh, this is a crosswalk, and then they and they're left wondering why it feels incomplete. Like, why isn't this marked? I don't think they're getting the message that it's unsafe. I think they're getting the message that it's incomplete.
Okay.
So would we be allowed to remove those? I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just asking, like, do those have to be there?
Yes, I think we could go to directional crosswalks and not have ramps aimed across the thoroughfare, but I mean, that would be a change to what's out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you can do it, but there's also going to be a lot of people that were comfortable making that crossing, and now they don't, if they're in a bike or whatever, now they don't have a easy way to get from the sidewalk to the road. So while some people may find that it's better to take them away, you'll find others that, why'd you take them away? So I think that's why we have some that are unmarked versus.
I guess I just brought it up because I was going down the thought path of this is about messaging, and we're trying to send a signal as to what's safe and what's not safe.
So
and
we
there's,
either need to complete it or take it away, is basically what you're saying.
I'm not suggesting we do anything. I'm just asking, like, why it seems incongruent to me to have something that we think is unsafe unless there is a signal there, because it's a big open space, right? But also we still have the ramps, which says cross here. I think, well, I'll leave it at that for now. I have some other comments about the neighborhood, but.
Councilman Ziegler, did you have a comment earlier? Question?
No, I was going to jump into what Councilmember Happy was saying, so I'm good.
Okay.
I have some comments, but no questions at this point.
Any more questions for Mr. Dalton? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do. All right, we're back in discussion. As I started off with this item, talked about getting here, and we need to make a decision tonight, whatever that is. I'll tell you where I stand on it. I'll always want to be on the side of being proactive and doing what's necessary. And I always look at, if we lower the speed limit, what do we lose? That's where I'm at. And, we always talk about, let's try something new. Let's try an experiment. We tried an experiment here about a year ago in downtown Apex with an always stop. And we tried it and it didn't work out. So I'm willing to try this lowering the speed limit here and to see how it comes out. I know we can't predict what happens. People may comply. Maybe all people will, I don't know. But I would like to move in the direction of lowering the speed limit. That's where I'm at. As far as the crosswalks, I'm still up in the air on. There's a lot of moving parts in that. So let's deal with the issue of lowering the speed limit. Can we talk about that first? And then we'll get to the crosswalk. Where do you stand on lowering the speed limit?
Lower it.
Okay.
Same, yeah, I mean, to me, the area, like I said earlier, between Smith Farms and 64, that all should be 35. The rest of it can be 45. But that area is at much higher risk of someone getting hurt at higher speeds.
Okay. Councilman?
I'm reflecting on what we heard from Mr. Dalton, because his view is, I think, a reflection of where we anticipate the road to be. It's going to be 4 lanes. It's going to be DOT's road. There's a lot of forward thinking. And I think in terms of the studies and the information and data, I think he's absolutely right on that aspect. I think that in terms of kind of justifying the need for a reduction of speed limit, I think he's right in terms of the data doesn't really support it. But with that said, we can lower it. It's still our road. I mean, you know, I'm kind of in favor of having a speed trap someplace in our town to raise revenue.
For the county, you mean, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Still our road.
Still revenue.
For the court system.
Still revenue.
Court system.
For the court system, yeah.
Well, like I said, I work for the courts too. Raises revenue, but I mean, I think realistically that I understand where our staff is relying on the idea of it's going to be 4-lane, it's going to be it's built for major thoroughfare, but I do think that until it is there, we can still we can still utilize it for our needs. So I think reduction would be a good idea.
I want to clarify one thing, if I could, unless you guys want to, ready to jump in.
Like he's looking that way, so go ahead. It's like when the mayor
Sorry.
turns around.
Okay, I'm turning this way. Go ahead, go.
All right, okay.
We'll come back.
Well, okay. You know, let's be honest. This neighborhood was built incorrectly, right? We should never have allowed a thoroughfare through a neighborhood like this. You know, and you know, same thing with Salem Village, because we're gonna have the same problem there. I think that puts a burden on us, you know, to review future development plans a little bit more carefully with that in mind. That being said, I hear Mr. Dalton's comments loud and clear, right? There's data studies, you know, designs that warrant certain measures or not, right? Right now, the data doesn't seem to support it. That said, we also don't need a major thoroughfare with the capacity that this road was built for, with, you know, 4,000 vehicles a day. So I see absolutely no problem with lowering the speed limit to 35 miles an hour. Give it a try, see where it takes us, right? And see if there's, you know, that's going to be sufficient with all the other measures that are being put in place, and take it from there.
Thank you.
I've listened to the residents and the staff. I'm statistician, data guy, and I think, Frank, I'm with staff on this. I think it's a bad idea, in fact, to lower the speed limit. And but I think I'm outvoted.
Okay.
So, yes, what I wanted to clarify, add on to my brief answer earlier, I think, I don't doubt what Russ is saying. Like, I get that the road's constructed a certain way, and I believe the road was constructed to be 45 miles an hour. The issue is not the road. As Councilmember Zigerman was hinting at, the issue is how the neighborhood was constructed around the road. The issue is the construction of the neighborhood seems to encourage these pedestrian patterns we're saying are unsafe. And I'm really bothered about what to do about Hasse and Little Gem, whatever it's called there. Like, is that, again, like the way the neighborhood's constructed, there's, I don't know, 50, 100 residents on the, you know, the west side of Richardson, who I think the flow of the neighborhood encourages them to cross over at that location, go over one more street, Brown Bell or whatever it's called, and then walk up to the neighborhood center. Because if they use the two-stage crossing, if you drive down there, they're fenced off from where the neighborhood center. They have to go all the way up to Core Banks, right? So that they don't want to go up to there, because then they have to go up, and it's another, you know, couple hundred feet. And just human nature is like this: the shortest way for many of these people to get to their amenity center is by using this, what we feel is an unsafe crossing. That bugs me. So, you know, the issue with lowering the speed limit, that's simple and easy. I think I hear the staff's comments that, you know, compliance will be an issue. I'm not looking for 100% compliance. I think if the average speed goes down, that makes it a little bit safer. Is it 100% safe? No. We still have to do something about this intersection, Hasse and Little Gem and Richardson. But if it makes it a little safer, then I think that's a good idea. And I think it's really a site plan issue. It's really a thinking of what are the pedestrian foot traffic going to look like. And I tell you, they're not going to rebuild Sweetwater, is what it is. So we have to do the best we can with what's on the ground today. And if the speed limit's a little lower than it was designed for, I think that's better than the alternative.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go ahead and vote on reduction of speed limit. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that reduce the speed to 35.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 4-1. Crosswalk.
So I came in here today ready to put a crosswalk there as well. but listening to staff's description, I'm concerned about the possibility of increasing risk if we have, because it makes sense. You have people looking to turn and they're looking the other way and they you know, hit the gas and they look over, they're not looking at that location. And I saw in the presentation, staff is proposing future studies and plans to look at this. We could potentially do a study here. I think, you know, it's a long shot for it to be warranted for a signal, which might be the right answer, but it might not be a long shot in a few years. Once this is all built out, we can do a study then. So I'm not ready to move forward with directing staff to put crosswalks where it's not warranted this time. I would ask that we think about what we can do better here. Like when I threw out my suggestion about, you know, taking out that cutout to, again, encourage people to go to the other location. You know, that was a little bit tongue in cheek, but just the idea, like, is there something we can do? Is the only thing just to put a light there? There has to be something else we can do to enhance safety. I'm concerned. I think that the Richardson or the Sweetwater HOA should, I think they can take steps by their amenity center to encourage the use of that two-stage crossing by opening up somehow on the fence, because I think people aren't, I'm just guessing, I think people aren't using it because they have to go all the way up. Why bother? Like, just walk up to Core Banks, especially once there's a light there. You know, is there an opportunity to put another one of those further south, closer to Haas? If, you know, if we can move it after the light eventually opens up at Core Banks. I think the lighting that's coming is going to be a big benefit. You know, that's something the resident asked for. That's going to get there soon. We're considering some ordinance changes that we discussed around the gates, so that's positive as well. I think we need to keep looking at this, but I don't think today is the right time to do something with the crosswalk. I'm worried about consequences.
Can I actually clarify? Are we talking about crosswalk at the Core Banks only, right, in this, or are you discussing Core Banks, or are you discussing Haas or somewhere else too?
Haas
Only.
Yeah.
Not Core Banks.
Core Banks is going to have a light, right? We believe it's going to have a light in short order, not a year or two.
We're talking about Haas here.
Yes, the light will fix Core Banks. Like, you get a light. That's the best thing you do for pedestrian safety. Okay. That's fine. So there's no sense in us trying to force something before that. I'm talking about Haas.
Can I ask a question? I've seen crosswalk designs that go diagonal through an intersection, presumably to avoid that people turning one way or looking one way and turning the other way. Is that something that we could potentially explore here?
I mean, that still puts people through the middle of the uncontrolled intersection, so I'm not sure
We
how
would need to build like a median in the middle or something, but, you know, to give them a safe haven halfway through. But
okay, I'd have to see a concept for what you're talking about. I'm not familiar.
yeah, it's been mostly in cityscapes. Like, you know, I've seen them in London, I've seen them in New York, I think. You know, but, you know, people cross diagonally instead of, you know, one and over. I'm just, you know, hearing your concern about, right, the crosswalks there at the intersection. I'm just trying to think of
Typically, those types of crosswalks are on major highways or major volumes, where here we're talking about we're not there yet. So, and it still requires a pedestrian signal and everything. So I think where we're at today with Richardson Road, that's probably not the best fit.
Thank you.
I've seen there's like 1,000 people crossing at one time.
Yeah.
Situations. It's awesome.
Let's do it.
So
You
what
guys
I'm
just
hearing-
need to show up, 1,000 people at a time.
What I'm hearing, there's no direction staff for crosswalks. We're just gonna continue to study that and go from there. That's where we are today. So, any other discussion on that before we move on?
I think the crosswalks at unsignalized intersections are dangerous. Like, I know there's one on the Peakway near where I live. It's like dangerous, and I think it's bad. So the one by the Peakway in the Greenway is a mid-block one. It's safer than that one up by, I think, White Dogwood or somewhere. So I think it's bad. I think they're dangerous and they should be avoided.
I do think that we need to start thinking about the signalization along that road. I know that we're waiting for studies. I think the staff is appropriate in counseling us to say, let's wait for the studies to justify the numbers. But I don't know if there's a disadvantage, and this is the question that I think can be answered by staff with a little bit of work to help us out. I don't know the answer to the question of whether or not having a signal where there isn't a need right now, but will be a need 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, is a disadvantage to us. It may not be standard, but is there a disadvantage to it? That's the question that I'd love to be able to get an answer from.
Okay. Are you talking about core banks or?
I'm talking about all the plan. I mean, you know, we've got this right here. There's at least 3 planned lights on there, and there's the statement of these are future signals. The question is, why are we waiting for the 5-year number when in the previous slide we've got a volume estimate of 23,300 vehicles per day in 2035? I just asked the question of, you know, why are we waiting till 2035? If we think if that's our estimate, why are we waiting to 2035? Is there a downside to having a signal in the middle of someplace that isn't used at capacity? And that's the question. And I know that's something that is a more in-depth question for staff to try to answer. And I don't like putting, especially Mr. Dalton, on the stand about that, because he's a data person, and I'd like to be able to appreciate the data.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. We'll move on to the next item. Updates by Town Manager Katie Crosby.
I just have a couple updates. The first is just recognizing our public service employees and just saying thank you to all of our staff for the work that they do for our community every day. You'll see some updates and highlights on our social media platform, recognizing the staff, and that'll be through the lens of our peak principles. And that'll be each day this week. And then on Thursday, we'll have a celebration for the staff at our town cookout. Our Shred Day is coming up this Saturday at the Public Works Campus on Upchurch from 8 to 11 a.m. This is a program that our police department runs twice a year, and it's to combat identity theft. And then last but not least, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers this Sunday. So that's it.
Happy Mother's Day early. Okay, thank you for your updates. All right, move now. Is there a motion to go into closed session for closed session item 1? So moved by Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Second, Gray. All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passed unanimously. We move into closed session.
Motion to adjourn?
I think we need that. Are we back on?
Let me pull up Robert's rules.
Is it we do motion?
Now the mayor's right. Like if you haven't adopted it, you can just, you have a lot once when you through it.
Cool. Are we back on? All right, we're back in, and if there's no further business, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.